Houston, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
Good evening, folks, and welcome to Alien Addict on a very, very special Christmas Eve, because we've got none other than Rey Hernandez on tonight, and I've been really looking forward to getting Rey on for quite a while now, but I actually got the bottle to ask him to come on the other day, and it was going to be scheduled for the 4th of March, but he is here with us tonight, and he is the co-founder of the Edgar Mitchell Free Foundation and the CCRI Foundation. And Rey, welcome to the channel, and thank you so much again for just coming on at such short notice.
No, thank you for the invitation. Today I was free at this time, and so it was good scheduling.
Well, Rey, before I start mumbling on, can you just kind of tell us a little bit about how this all started for you?
Okay.
Just for anybody who hasn't heard it already.
Okay. First of all, I have an academic background. I went to Cornell University, which is an Ivy League school, for a master's degree. I then was a PhD candidate at the University of California, Berkeley. And then I was a professor for quite a long time at the City University of New York and at the New School for Social Research. And I've been working as an attorney now for the last 22 years. And so I was a total atheist, materialist. I had no conception at all about the paranormal, about the UFOs, near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences, the topics of consciousness whatsoever. And then in March, I believe it was March 4th, 2012, my wife and I had an experience, and I'll give you a very, very brief rundown of it because to describe the details would take a very, very long time. But basically, we had a 15-year-old dog, a Jack Russell Terrier, that was very, very ill. And then one night, she became completely paralyzed. When my wife had returned, I told her, and obviously she was quite hysterical because that was like our first child. We cared for her like a daughter, our own daughter, and she began to pray all night. My wife was born and raised in Mexico, a hardcore Catholic, and prayer for her was very, very common. So she prayed all night, and me being the good atheist, I said, "You can pray all the 4-letter word you want, okay? Nothing's going to happen. Tomorrow we're going to be putting her to sleep. We're going to euthanizing her." And I already called our vet, and we got it scheduled. So in the morning, the dog woke us up. She was barking because that's the only thing she could do. And we checked her out, and she was still totally paralyzed. So I went back to sleep. My wife carried her down the stairs to go to the bathroom. In the living room, she saw an object that was floating 4 feet off the ground. And the object looked like an upside down U, the letter U. But it was large. It was big. It was roughly 2.5 feet wide by about 3 feet in height. Okay. An upside down letter U. And she described it as semi-metallic to full metallic because it was coming in and out of reality. Our dimension. You could see it like fully materialized, and then sometimes it was semi-transparent. And then, being the good Mexican Catholic that she is, and she was praying all night for this, she thought it was her angels. Her angel had come and visit her. So she knelt down and started praying. Okay, and so she then started calling me, "Rey, Rey, Rey," and I was like, "Shit, this is Sunday morning, she's waking me up at 6 o'clock, probably for a little cockroach or a little mouse or something like that. I totally ignored her. Rey, Rey, Rey. And I wanted to sleep, right? Like anyone would. So she ran upstairs. She hauled me out of bed physically. And I was, "What's going on? What's going on?" You'll see. But what's going on? What you wake me up for? You'll see. And so she ran down the stairs, and I followed her. and I was like maybe 4 or 5 steps, behind her. And then when she got to like the bottom rung of the floor, all of a sudden she disappeared. Okay, and this happened quickly, like instantaneously. What I'm about to tell you, all of a sudden, some type of intelligence took over my mind. Okay, I had no peripheral vision all around me. Okay, so everything around me was dark. Only a certain area. If you could go like this and see, like you could only see in a certain area, everything around is dark. Okay, it was like that. And then the only area that I could see was I was seeing what I now call an energy being. And let me describe it to you. It was approximately 2 feet wide by 1.5 feet in height. Okay, and inside was all this wavy energy, like you've seen those videos of a desert mirage, how it waves like that. It was something similar to that, and it was multiple colors inside. Okay, and it was also semi-translucent. I could see, the couch behind it. So it was semi-transparent. And then in my mind, I'm looking at this thing, and I thought to myself, she woke me up for this crap. This bullshit, I'm going back to sleep. And I went like that, this is bullshit, So I didn't even care that my wife had disappeared, the dog had disappeared, that I'm watching this energy being in front of me. I had no conception that my mind was being influenced. Okay, so I walked up the stairs. I remember putting my hands on my chest, looking straight up, and I was completely knocked out. Okay, when I woke up about an hour later, I was fully conscious now, and I was like, "What the, what 4-letter word, And I ran down the stairs, and then my wife like poof reappeared again. She looks down, she sees the dog running around the entire living room, fully healed like a teenager. Okay, and she was celebrating, "Hallelujah, hallelujah! The angels cured her. The angels cured her." This is in Spanish, Los Ángeles la curaron, Los Ángeles la curaron. And in my head was like an atom bomb blew up in my head. I didn't even have words. I was speechless. I was like, like what the, and then after I composed myself, I asked my wife, I said, "What happened?" "Oh, my angels came, blah, blah." And she described it, and they healed her. Look at her, I said, "Well, look at the time. It's 7 o'clock. An hour passed. Where were you? Where did you go?" "And you disappeared in front of me." I said, "I didn't go anywhere." Later on, we found out that she had an hour of missing time, about 55 minutes. What she remembered was that she had gone down the stairs after, she had woken me up. She looked down, the dog was running around, completely healed, and she started to celebrate. So she had no memory at all where she was for those 55 minutes. Now, the dog, even before her paralysis, she couldn't run, she couldn't jump. She was like a 95-year-old lady with arthritis. She was very, very ill. Okay, but now she was running around like a little puppy. I mean, physically, she didn't look like a puppy. She looked like what she looked before. But physically, she was like, running around, the whole living room and jumping, And so then I asked her what she saw, and she drew what she saw. And then I told her that's not what I saw. I saw something totally different. I drew what I saw, and we had 2 different stories. And what it was that when she encountered that object in the living room, I wasn't there. And then when I encountered that energy being in the living room, she wasn't there. And it was total chaos, total bedlam, And so after we finished comparing notes and discussing this, and to her, it's like, "You're an atheist. You wouldn't know it was my angel came and cured her. I was praying all night to the Virgin Mary, and it appeared, And I was like, that was no Virgin Mary. This is some paranormal shit. I don't know what the fuck is going on, So immediately I went afterwards to the internet. It was all paranormal this, paranormal this, paranormal this. I had no idea it was UFO related. Even though she said the word in Spanish, nave. She said it se parecía como una nave pequeña. It looked like a small craft. Okay. But I never associated that with UFOs, because I always thought UFOs were outside, right? So what had happened was, like about a month later, the dog woke her up at, I kept on sleeping at 3:30 in the morning. She got up thinking the dog wants to go to the bathroom. So the dog goes outside, and then she hears this very, very loud noise for like a minute. The noise stopped, and she described like a 747 jet. Then she looked up, and it was a huge Goodyear blimp, right on top of her, And then this is how she starts off. She goes, "Oh, my angels came and visited me last night. They came in a beautiful angelic craft. It had beautiful colors, just like the stained glass windows of our church, all around its edges, And I said, what the hell are you talking about, And then I said, draw what you saw. And then she drew it, more or less. I said, you saw a UFO. She goes, no, it wasn't a UFO. It was my angels. You wouldn't understand because you're an atheist, And so then began her going at night to pray, to see her angels, calling them down, and these huge UFOs would appear. Okay. And then about 6 months after that initial experience, I called down the UFO that she had been calling down and interacting with. And like 15 minutes later, this huge object appeared.
When you say you called it down, how did you call it down?
Well, she had been, the night before, I had seen this video of this man named Prophet Yahweh, who's this heavyset African-American man speaking in Hebrew. I don't know if it's a prayer or what, because I don't know what the hell he was doing. In the middle of the day, and he had a camcorder. And then these little tiny UFOs would appear in the sky, okay? And then I remember the video that I saw that I remembered was one with a camera crew from a television studio. And they were making fun of this guy, like he's a crazy madman calling down a UFO. But they had a professional, camera man, And they were able to zoom in, and they saw this little UFO hovering in the sky when they zoomed in. And so immediately they said, okay, back to the studio, like, this shit is real, let's get out of here, and they cut him off quickly, and so I remembered that, and so I said, okay, I'm gonna try to call it down, and so what I did is I just requested it with a lot of love to communicate with them, to give them thanks, because my wife had been interacting with them, and she had the ability to call them down and to say thank you, for healing our dog. So in the beginning, I was like, killing time, because I was waiting for a friend of mine to come by. And then I became more sincere. And after like 15 minutes of doing this, wanting to see them, at the end, I was very, very emotional, very, very sincere, And then after 15 minutes, I was looking around every minute or so, nothing was around there. And so I said, I can cuss here on the show?
You can say what you like on this show.
Okay. I say, what a fucking asshole. I'm going fucking crazy, calling down a UFO. I'm fucking going down the rabbit hole real quick. I need to stop this shit because I'm fucking going crazy, right? So as soon as I had that thought, okay, in my mind, right on top of my next door neighbor's house, 5 feet from the roof, was this huge object. And it was like 100 meters, like a football, you guys call it pitch, right? Like a football pitch up, and like 6 football pitches going straight back. It had 3 segments. The middle segment was like this huge long object. The first segment in the front was like this huge round object, and the back was another huge round object. And it wasn't fully materialized. It was comprised of hundreds and hundreds of streaks of light, okay, that formed like the whole shell of the object, okay, all around it. And inside was all this white energy that was moving around. But it was semi-transparent. You could see the clouds behind it, okay? And so then I heard a voice. Daddy, you and Mommy have seen UFOs. Next time you guys see a UFO, you call me, Daddy, all right? Don't forget, right? So in my head, I said, my daughter wants to see the UFO. My daughter wants to see it, okay? Now, my daughter had just turned 10 years old, okay? So what rational father would call their daughter, who just turned 10 years old, to come outside to be literally 30 feet, which is 10 yards, okay? Maybe one fifth of a pitch, in distance, very, very close, the bottom of this object, okay? And you can get a rock and throw it and hit the bottom of it. That's how close this was, okay? No father would do that, okay? But in my head was like, my daughter wants to see it, okay? So I ran to the window, because remember, this was on top of my next door neighbor's house, okay? So I ran to my house, and I'm calling my daughter, and she opens up the window. What is it? I said, hurry up, run outside, there's a UFO. Hello?
Ray? It's been beamed up. we seem to have lost Ray for a second there. I'm sure he'll be back. I hope he'll be back. He spoke too soon. Ray, if you can hear what I'm saying, you might want to drop back out and drop back in. I'll message you. Interesting. I've got a stable connection. I don't know. Yep, I've got a stable connection. Okay. Yep, he's gone. Fingers crossed he'll come back in, guys. But guys, in the chat, I'm sorry if I don't get to read exactly what you're saying. I'm just kind of concentrating on what Ray is saying. It's a lot to take in. And I want to get onto the subject of Edgar Mitchell when he comes back on, because he worked with him and great friends. So let me just message Ray again, send him the link. He will be back on, don't worry, people, unless he's been taken. I don't think he's been taken. Invite. Copy. This has never happened before. Reply. There we go. Paste. Send link. Send him the link again. Fingers crossed he will be back on. Merry Christmas, people, one and all. It's 2 days in the UK now away from Christmas. There we go. Stephen, thank you. I need to ask Ray what he thinks of Stephen Greer. It's probably, I don't know if they're buddies or not. Probably not. My guess, because he said he doesn't like a lot of the BS that goes on in ufology. So let's see. Ray, where is Ray? Let me message him. Ray, if you can hear me, just click on the link again and join back in when you can. I don't know what happened there, but we're waiting, and you've got the audience is very intrigued. See, I'm no good on my own here. Like, I can't do a goof on and talk to you guys when it's just me, unless I'm making a scripted video. Which goof on it in the chat. You're a very talented man, very handsome man as well. I wish Ray had opened a beer up and joined me, because it's the first time I've heard him curse. But yeah, it's been a funny old year, guys. And I thought they said let's just invite Rey Hernandez on to end the year with, and for January, for the new year, we're getting Stephen Greer on. If I get the bottle to send him an invite, I don't think he'll come on though. In fact, I'm positive he won't come on. I just want him to come on so I can introduce him to Homer Greer. I don't think he'd be impressed. But let's see what's going on here. Where is Ray? See, this is why you can do a video that's not live, and when it messes up, you can edit that bit out. But there he's back. He's back in the house. He is back in the house, people. There we go.
You know, the computer crashed.
You look like Terminator.
The whole thing crashed.
I thought you'd been taken.
I'm seeing these spots all over me.
Maybe it's the green screen, like you said.
Yeah, said the green screen. Yeah. Anyway, the computer crashed, man. So anyway. Where did I leave off? I was talking to my daughter, and
the football pitch.
She was watching this thing. Yeah, but basically, let me try to summarize here quickly. there was telepathic communication that took place. And it was only afterwards that I realized that they also had influence over my mind as well, because the way my friend with his wife and their 17-year daughter came by, all of us had cell phones. No one even bothered to take a picture or video of this. And the reason was, I found out later on, is that whatever this intelligence is, it can upload your information, okay, of who you are, all your memories, upload it up, and they could download whatever information they want. Okay. For example, my daughter never told me that. Okay. So they had uploaded like my memory banks, my computer chips of how my daughter speaks and everything up. And they were able to download then a voice of my daughter telling me something. Okay. Which sounded exactly like her. They were able to change what we were watching, what I had described, in a blink of an eye. Why? Because when my friends came, my adult friends, they were questioning, trying to explain this away. And so in my head, I thought to whatever this was, this intelligence, I said, you better come up with some better shit than this, man, because my friends don't believe you. Okay. Because they were trying to explain it away. Instantaneously, what I just described to you disappeared, and they were replaced by hundreds of super large stars. Like, for example, like 20 times the size of Venus. Okay. But these weren't stars that were in the sky. They were like inside that object. Okay. If you could just imagine where that object was. Okay. You have all these stars, and they were blinking on and off like this.
Well, a bit like looking into when you see a black hole in the movies and it shows the other side.
No. Let me give you a better explanation. In bikes, people, when they ride bikes, let me turn this on here. People, when they ride bikes, they have like these flashers in the back that are like this.
Yes.
Okay, that's exactly what it was, except they were large. These stars were very large. And then these stars would take their turns powering up to like the size of the moon, and then powering back down again. And then like 10 minutes after watching this, my friend said, oh, we got things to do. We got to go. That's not normal. Okay. You're watching once in a lifetime experience, and all of a sudden you got to go, And then my daughter and I stayed for another 15 minutes watching this. And all of a sudden I felt I was being attacked by mosquitoes. Okay. And then I couldn't take it anymore. And I grabbed my daughter and I said, come on, let's go inside. These mosquitoes are killing me. So once I go inside and I'm telling my wife what had happened, and my daughter goes to me, Daddy, there were no mosquitoes outside. And then it was like the hypnotist, snapped his fingers, and I woke up and I realized what had just happened. I was like in some type of a semi-trance where you have the ability to think and react, but like you couldn't cross a certain line, like taking videos and pictures and things like that. It was like a semi-trance. I have no better way of explaining that. But then I realized like what actually had happened. And I ran downstairs, grabbed my video camera. I had a professional camera, video recorder, professional camera, and I ran outside. Nothing was there. And then it was afterwards, I said, my God, I realized why inside my living room, I totally did not care that my wife had disappeared. I did not care that I was watching this object, because I then realized that whatever this intelligence is, it can get inside my mind, totally influence my mind and my thoughts. Okay. It can make me believe that I'm being attacked by mosquitoes. Okay. It can also, what later on found out through my experiences, that what we were watching, these were recreations. Okay. These were like visual recreations. It's like an animation graphics, like in a virtual reality that we're seeing. Okay. They have that ability to put that in our thoughts. Okay. So
a little bit like when you see the Matrix, when they can.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. Okay. In later on, I'll talk about our research study. And in that research study, we had literally thousands of different types of beings that people were describing. Okay. And so, it leads you to speculate, did the 6-foot owl being with legs come from the 6-foot owl planet, in some other constellation? Or were these recreations, okay, to make you feel more comfortable, okay, to interact with, okay? And also, we'll get into that aspect later on. But basically, with my experiences, there was another series of events that occurred where they gave me spirituality, and they gave it to me through a series of near-death related experiences. Anyway, I won't go into detail; it'll take too long. But over this 4-month period, they triggered these 3 events over a 3-day period, one after another, and that's when I realized that I was an eternal spiritual being. Okay, and for the first time ever, I talked to our universal creator. Okay, some people that are religious refer to as God, but to me it's the one mind, the universal mind, and to these entities that have been interacting with me, which I call modern angels, for lack of a better term. And then for the organization, the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Foundation, it was formed over a 2-day period. And let me briefly describe it, because to get into the details takes a very long time. But basically, I was driving to work at 8:30 in the morning to go to downtown Miami. There's a major road, Route 836, which is a major highway, like 4 or 5 lanes on either direction, going into downtown Miami, Florida. And then I was listening to this interview on the radio, and all of a sudden, I wasn't in the car anymore. Okay. Now, mind you, this was in the middle of a traffic jam. Okay. All of a sudden, I'm in nothingness. Okay. I'm only mind. I don't see anything. I don't hear anything. I don't touch anything, whatever. I'm just pure consciousness. Okay. Then all of a sudden, I'm materializing inside this reality where I'm inside this huge, gigantic cart, like a wheel cart. Okay.
Yeah.
And it's slowly spinning around, and inside the wheel cart, there's different sections, like a cart. Okay. And inside each section was like an animated video. Okay. So I'm looking at each one, and there was like maybe 10 of those different ones going all around. And each one, I looked at it and I knew what each one was. Okay. I now call them the contact modalities. Those are all the different ways that humans are piercing the veil of our reality and having contact with non-human intelligence. So one of them I would look at and I said, okay, that's UFO contact. Like I knew it. And it wasn't a voice that was telling me this. It was like straight information going into my consciousness. The next one, I knew that was near-death experiences. The next one, I knew that was out-of-body experiences. The next one, those are people that are communicating with deceased people, deceased ghosts and spirits. Okay. The next one, that's hallucinogenic journeys. Okay. You try DMT, you try mushrooms, magic mushrooms, and boom, here's a mantid being right in front of you, like saying, look, Ray, you fucked up, you need to do this, you need to do that, and actually, to talk about that topic, numerous universities around the world finally got permission to do studies on DMT and psilocybin, the ingredient in magic mushrooms. One was the leading medical school in the United States, Johns Hopkins School of Medicine. That's considered, one of the top medical schools in the United States. And it was conducted by these professors of psychiatry. And they were looking at psilocybin and DMT, excuse me, as cures for people that suffer depression, alcoholism, things of that sort. And because it was found in a researcher in Latin America, a medical doctor that I've been working with DMT and ayahuasca for many, many years. And it seemed to cure, drug addiction, depression, different types of mental disorders, mental health disorders. And so they finally got the authorization to do that at several major universities throughout the world, not just the U.S. So anyway, so all these different ways, channeling, for example, was another one. Okay. Meditation. People are meditating. All of a sudden they pop out of their body and having encounters and teachings and things of that sort. So And then all of a sudden, it was, again, information. It wasn't a voice that was telling me, these are all the different ways that humans are communicating with us. Okay. And humans are studying separate and distinct phenomena. Okay. But in fact, it's one phenomenon. Okay. And it said the glue, that was the word they used, glue. It wasn't a word, it was a concept. The glue that's holding it all together, humans are calling it consciousness. But in fact, what it is the very fabric of our reality. Okay. And then it said, you need to inform humanity of the relationship between us, whatever us is, this intelligence, okay, consciousness, the fabric of our reality, and the spirit world, okay, and the spirit world, the relationship between us, consciousness, and the spirit world. It said, there's two criteria here. This is not about you getting wealth. It's not about money, okay? And secondly, you're going to need help, and the people that are going to be helping you have to be people with minimal ego. So when I heard that minimal ego, boom, I'm back in my car listening to this man doing a documentary about his liposuction. He was doing art fat, from his liposuction, and it didn't skip us a beat. It continued to the second of when I was taken out, but yet I was out in this other reality for like at least 20 minutes. Okay. So I was taken outside of space-time. Okay. Now that experience that happened to me, we eventually asked it in our research study, which I'm going to talk about in a couple of minutes. And that research study revealed that 50% of the 4,200 people that took our surveys from over 100 countries in the English language survey, 50% were taken out of their bodies into another reality, into a matrix reality. Okay.
Wow. So, right. Okay. Well, here's what at what point?
Yeah.
So what point in this? Because I'm just a bit like I know we want to talk about the other stuff here, but you got Edgar Mitchell involved in this.
Okay. All right. Yeah. This is
How did that happen?
The continuation of this story. Okay. When I got home that afternoon, I got an email from Mary Rodwell. And Mary Rodwell is one of the world's leading researchers on UFO contactees and abductees. Okay. And what had happened, this event occurred in May of 2013. So it's a little bit over a year after that initial experience in our living room. And what had happened was that after I saw that huge UFO, I began having tons of paranormal experiences. Okay. And the one I just told you is just one example. Okay. But it was literally like every week there was some stuff, going on. And some much more powerful, like that experience that I told you about, and others less. Okay. And so in October of 2012, I had sent an email out to numerous people in the UFO field. Mary Rodwell was one of them. Okay. And so I only got two responses back. One was by this man named Whitley Strieber, who people, okay, he sent me a response back. And the other one was a man named Grant Cameron. Okay. And it was basically like, hey, hang in there, buddy. It was very short and cryptic, And so he was Mary Rodwell responding to an email that I'd sent her in October. And her email read, "Dear Ray, I'm sorry I'm responding now to an email that you had sent me 6 months ago, but it just popped on my computer today." Okay. And it was the same day of that experience. And if you ever interview Mary Rodwell, ask her about that, and she will verify that to you.
I would love to. Okay.
Is there a way we could pause this for like a minute? My daughter's calling me from Mexico.
Yeah, not a problem, Ray. I'll tell you what. I'll drop you out, and as soon as you are ready, you just come back on, mate.
Okay. Let me see. I don't know how to drop out of this.
There you go. There you go. I've dropped you out, Ray. I've dropped you out. Wow. Wowzers. I need one of these backgrounds. I need a Ray background. I need a green screen. I was just explaining to Ray earlier on before. Ray, when you're ready, just wave your hands about because I can see you in the bottom corner, but just kind of like, yeah. But yeah, I need to get something green behind me so I can have a better background than my living room. But my wife is working from home these days, so to be fair though, I have been in the living room for quite a long time. But guys, how are we in the chat? Are we good? Is everybody having a good evening? So, we're all here, full house tonight. But yeah, the interesting thing with how I wanted to get Ray on in the first place was if you remember the interview I did with David, the guy who's completely blurred out. There's a picture in that interview where David is totally blurred out, and you can see him next to Travis Walton and Rey Hernandez, who I'm interviewing right now. And he said, which is exactly what Ray was just explaining earlier, that because David went to that because he was seeking out the answers, just like we all are. And he was talking about the UFOs and he's not seen any UFOs. And then Ray turned around to David and said, well, have you ever thought about just looking for them? You know, just going out and Ray, are you ready? You ready? Yep, he's ready. He's waving. He's here. He's back in the game. I was just explaining then about David. The question that one of the questions that David did ask you was about UFOs, and he hadn't seen any. And you said, "Well, have you ever tried looking for them?"
Oh yeah. I mean, I've called down. I tried calling down UFOs 4 times, and 3 times I was successful. And there were these huge objects, like I told you about. The most recent one was actually at the home of another attorney. He lives north of Tampa. His name is Mike Merberg, and maybe you want to have him on air. He's graduated from Princeton University, of an Ivy League school. He's now an attorney. He's my age. He's about 65 or so, and it was a huge object that appeared very low to us. It's difficult telling the distance, but I don't know, 100 meters to 200 meters up. And it was a cylinder, silverish color, had no wings. It was like a pure cylinder. It was the size of 2 school buses, you know. And it flew like right above us and cut, you know, like right at an angle so we could see it perfectly what it looked like. And there was besides Mike and I was 2 other people there, and one guy yelled, look, it's got no wings, it's got no wings. Okay. Now, the interesting part also about how it influenced your mind, right? He had a very powerful camera, one of the big gigantic ones, you know. He didn't even have that rolling, okay? And we were seeing this thing coming to us, okay? And then after it came, you know, through us, right? Mind you, the guy next to him, you know, a friend of his said, look, it's got no wings. It's got no wings. And afterwards he goes, oh, it's probably a secret military plane, you know, and it's going to that Air Force base that's it's in that direction. Okay. And to me in my head was, okay, it's probably a secret military plane. You get what I'm getting at? You know,
yeah.
How it totally controls your thoughts. Okay.
Just a quick one on that, Ray, before we move on to what are your thoughts? I don't know if I've seen anybody ask you this, but what are your thoughts on the Tic Tac UFO and what people have talked and TTSA?
Yeah, first of all, I don't like to use the term UFOs. I'm using it now for your audience members.
Yeah, I know you like UAP.
UAP is better. Why? Because the vast majority of what people are seeing are not what can commonly described as physical crafts. Okay. They're usually all sorts of light configurations in the sky. And but this stereotype of materialist ufology is a physical craft that people are seeing. In terms of the Tic Tac, to me, it's like, you know, what the fuck has ufology given us in 80 years. They're giving us UFO pictures, UFO videos, you know? What the fuck? What else is there? After you've seen UFOs, after you call them down, some of them up close, and after you've had all these paranormal experiences associated with it, you're saying these people are totally fucking brain dead. They're totally clueless. They don't understand that it's so much more comprehensive than just the physicality of these experiences. Okay, what really is much more important is the paranormal aspects of the phenomenon after you've had contact experiences. For example, last night I was talking with this man who initially perceived all his experiences as highly negative. He had an abduction, okay, a UFO abduction. He wrote a book about his abduction, okay. I'll give you his name later on, okay. And he's spoken like at maybe 5 or 6 conferences. They won't invite me, but they will invite people that have had abductions to speak, you know, because that sells books. Okay, he had like 400 reviews on his book that's selling on Amazon, and me, I've had it now for 3 years, and you know, if we've had like 500 people to buy that book, you know, that's a lot. Okay. So
well, for anybody that wants to check your book out, it is in the description. And this is Beyond UFOs. This one here, is that right?
Yeah, Beyond UFOs. If you send me an email, you don't even have to buy the damn book. If you send me an email, I'll send you our 120-page chapter 1. I'll send you another chapter from our book and a summary of our data. And the email is info, I-N-F-O, at experiencer.org. info@experiencer.org. And if you like the materials I sent you, then you could order this book. It is heavy. It's 820 pages, okay? And it's not filled with bullshit, okay? It's filled with real data from our 5-year academic research study. So again, it's info@experiencer.org. And if you want to straight go ahead and order the book, it's at Amazon. So you just go to Amazon and type in Beyond UFOs. And there's another book with the same title. So type in Beyond UFOs from the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Foundation, and you'll find it. So, but anyway, let me tell you how Free got formed, this organization that did this book and this research study. So he was Mary Rodwell that sent me an email the same day that I had this out-of-body experience. I then emailed back and I said, look, Mary, this is all the stuff that's happened in the last 6 months, okay? You know, some crazy shit, okay? And this is what happened today. And so she was like, oh my God, Ray, you know, we need to talk. So she showed me how to use Skype. I had never used any of these platforms for internet platforms. I had never had a need for it. So we talked like 1:30 in the morning, my time, in New York. Actually, it was in Miami, but it's Eastern Standard Time. And then I told her, look, Mary, I got to go to work tomorrow. You know, can we continue? She says, yes. Okay. So the very next morning, this is 25 hours after that initial experience. Okay. At 9:30 in the morning, I got a phone call. Hello, is this Rey Hernandez? I said, yes. Who's this? Dr. Rudy Schild. Who? I have no idea who this man was. Okay. This man was a professor for over 45 years of astrophysics at Harvard University. Okay. He had written over 300 academic papers in astrophysics, many of them on black holes. Okay. And he had called out Stephen Hawking in many of his last papers, saying Hawking was completely wrong about black holes. Okay. And this is where he was wrong. Okay. Well, towards the end of his life, Stephen Hawking came out public and said, yes, I was wrong about black holes. Okay. And this is correct. And it was actually Rudy's theories from like 15 years earlier. So this man is like a Stephen Hawking type. Okay. And I didn't know who this man was. I found out later on. So he was calling me at 9:30 in the morning. And he says, Mary Rodwell didn't send you an email? I said, not that I know of. And in fact, she did. I just never opened it up because this was early in the morning, 9:30. And so he says, you know, are you able to talk to me, you know, about your experience yesterday? I said, sure. So then we spoke for over 90 minutes. And during that conversation, he told me all about his work with Dr. Edgar Mitchell and other PhD physicists on consciousness, okay, and the theory of our multiverse. And then he told me that the experience that I had was Dr. Edgar Mitchell's quantum hologram theory of consciousness, how all of these experiences are all interrelated. It's actually one phenomenon. And he said he had just finished writing a paper. I forgot the exact title, but in that title, it had the modern miracles, in it, which is that all the paranormal is all one phenomenon. And so we were there talking for 90 minutes. At the end of it, he says, look, Ray, you were told of a mission that you need to do, And I was like, what are you talking about, mission? He goes, they told you to do this, And to me, it's like I never really thought of it that way, okay? And he says, look, if you need help, I will be your scientific advisor. I'm here to help you, And I'm like, this guy's a loony bird, I don't know what the hell he was talking about, right? So then he says, write down this telephone number. So I wrote it down, blah, blah, blah. I thought it was his telephone, right? And he says, this is the telephone number of my mentor. So I'm saying to myself, who in the hell can be this guy's mentor? This guy's like 75 years old, retired professor from Harvard in astrophysics. So I say, well, who's your mentor? And he goes, Dr. Edgar Mitchell. Okay. And so, as a matter of fact, I'm going to give Edgar a call right now. I'm going to let him know of our conversation. That's it. That's it. Dr. Edgar Mitchell, the sixth man to walk on the moon, PhD from MIT in aeronautical engineering. He was there at MIT when they were building the lunar module, the lunar lander. Okay. So when Apollo 13 had its problems, Edgar told me that he was three people in that movie with Tom Hanks, because he had been there while they were constructing the lunar module at MIT. And he'd be learning from them in case later on there was something that went wrong with it. And that's actually what happened in Apollo 13. And Edgar had on his wall the Presidential Medal of Freedom, which is the highest award that a civilian can earn. And this was after Edgar had retired from the military, from the Navy. Richard Nixon, the U.S. president at that time, gave him that award. Okay. But more importantly for Edgar, after he came back from the moon, he had a paranormal experience out in space. Okay, it's called a samadhi experience, where all of a sudden he had like universal knowledge that we're all interrelated. There's no separateness. And he was like, it came, and then like after a minute or so, it just disappeared. And he was like, what the hell was that? And so when he came back, he wanted to learn what had happened to him, and he learned from a professor of religion that it's called a samadhi experience, and that's written in the Indian text, the Vedic text.
Yeah, he said that this has happened to other astronauts as well.
Correct.
They've not spoke about it, but
yeah,
this has happened to other astronauts.
Oh yeah. He told me that many of the U.S. astronauts and cosmonauts have had paranormal experiences in space. He told me tons of details because I eventually was at his house over 20 different times. And so anyway, so I give him a call. Oh, what I was wanting to say, what Edgar should be recognized more than anything else was that he had started the Institute for Noetic Sciences. And this is now the world's leading academic research institute on the psi phenomenon, okay, commonly known as ESP. Okay, and also they dabble a little bit with the paranormal channeling and other aspects of the paranormal. So that's the Institute for Noetic Sciences, major academic research institute. And so I give Edgar a call like 4 hours later because I was shit scared, to give him a call. I knew who he was, right? So he goes, Ray, what are you doing tomorrow? I said, well, I'm going to go to work. He says, can you take some time off tomorrow and come and see me? And I said, sure. He says, I live in Lake Worth, Florida, which is like 90-minute drive. He says, you could take the turnpike, take the exit. And it was like, 90 minutes from where I lived. And he says, how about tomorrow at 10 o'clock? So here I was a little bit more than 48 hours after that initial experience. And I was at the home of Dr. Edgar Mitchell. And I was there for a total of 6 hours. And he told me everything about his life. He just went into so many details. You tell me about Edgar and I'll tell you. Okay. His parents owned 2 stores in Roswell. Okay. Nevada. One the northern end of town, one on the southern end of town. These were agricultural stores, supply stores. Okay. He was there with the Roswell crash. He was a senior in high school. He had, I think it was June, maybe it was. He had just graduated, and he was on his way to go to Carnegie Mellon University. Okay. He learned how to fly airplanes as a teenager because he worked for the local airport and he was paid in flight lessons instead of money. Okay.
Wow.
He had was part of Chuck Yeager's test pilots. Okay. I mean, everything he told me, you know, he showed me the pictures of his mother that she drew of their house in Roswell, you know, the living room, that old black and white TV, you know, and he was telling me all about it. And he just went on and on about his life. You know, he told me tons of experiences as a national astronaut, tons of stuff. And so then after like hours had passed by, then he said, Ray, tell me about your experience. And I realized later on that he was doing that was to make me feel comfortable. You know, it's like he opened himself up totally. And then I opened up myself totally. And when I was telling him all this stuff, he didn't even blink an eye. I found out later that he has spoken with hundreds of experiencers. Okay. But that's a part of Edgar that no one knew about. They knew the UFO Edgar that spoke publicly about UFOs, you know, and Roswell and things like that. But they didn't know Edgar that had been working with contactees, you know, over many years. So at the end of it all, Edgar, after he listened to me, heard my story, what had happened to me, all my experience, he says, look, Ray, you were given a mandate. You know, specific instructions of what you need to do. And he says, Rudy and I, this is Dr. Rudy Schild, already discussed it, and we will be your scientific advisors. And he says, as a matter of fact, I also have a whole large group of PhDs. Most of them are physicists, and they can come and help us. They will also join us as advisors, right? And I didn't make the connection, you know, like me given a mission to do, you know, and it was Edgar that had suggested that, you know, we need to form an organization with all of our advisors, and let's put our heads together as to, you know, what they told you to do, you know, and we could, you know, work this out. I said, but Edgar, I have no idea what I'm going to be doing. And he goes, don't worry, you'll figure it out. It always happens that way. And so when I left his house, I said, this man's batshit crazy, you know. I said, what the fuck is he talking about? You know, and Rudy, another crazy, you know, MF, you know, and I'm like, what the fuck, you know? So anyway, I give Mary Rodwell a call, you know, let her know what had just happened, right? And she was like, you know, this is unbelievable, Ray, you know? And so she knew about Rudy because she had given the information to Rudy. But what had happened is that she had sent me an email saying, look, Ray, I gave Rudy your information. Is it okay for him to call you, you know? And what happened was that Rudy jumped the gun, and he called me before I had gotten back to Mary. Yeah, Mary, you know, it's okay. You know, tell him to call me, you know? And so that's how all this thing started, okay? So like about a few days later, this was that, and when I was at Edgar's house, I think it was like a Wednesday, the initial experience was on a Monday. Rudy called me on Tuesday. That Saturday morning, it was only a few days later, I woke up. In my head was exactly what I needed to do. Okay? Exactly, like in detailed, what I needed to do. So I went to the computer, I typed it all up, and what it was a research methodology of how do you go about doing the world's first academic research study of UFO contact experiencers. Okay? Because what had happened was that, as I told you before, you know, I have an academic background, okay?
Yeah.
And so when these things were happening to me, I said, let me try to research what has been written about it academically, okay? And I couldn't find anything. Certainly there was only 2 very small statistical studies, okay? And I won't mention them. They were tiny. One had 50 people, another one had 85 people, okay? So there was literally nothing. There was a book by Dr. John Mack titled Passport to the Cosmos. Dr. John Mack was a professor at Harvard University, a professor of psychiatry. And that's how Rudy got involved, because Dr. John Mack asked him one time, he says, Rudy, you that study astrophysics, I'm having all these people that are telling me, look, Dr. Mack, I was brought to another reality, another multiverse, another dimension, you know. So he goes to Rudy and says, Rudy, is it true that exists such a thing as other dimensions. Is physics talking about that? And Rudy said yes. As a matter of fact, yes. Okay, that there's these various theories of the multiverse. And so that brought a relationship between Dr. John Mack and Rudy. And then where they were trying to kick Dr. John Mack out of Harvard University because he had published a book on UFO contact experiencers, they tried to kick him out of Harvard. And he was a tenured professor. He had also won the Pulitzer Prize. I mean, this is one of the top prizes in literature, okay? So this is a very influential man, okay? Highly respected, a full professor of psychiatry at Harvard, at the Harvard Medical School, not even Harvard University, the Harvard Medical School. And so during this inquisition, Rudy testified before this board that yes, there is such a thing as a multiverse, that yes, there are probably, non-human intelligence out there, and he explained that we're finding these exoplanets, these new planets, every day now, and basically educated these folks that, look, physics is talking about these things, and so eventually they didn't kick Dr. Mack out, but that set the lasting relationship between Dr. John Mack and Rudy Schild. So,
Ray, can I ask before we quickly move on to the next part of this?
Yeah.
When you were speaking with Edgar Mitchell, did he ever mention that NASA is aware of what's going on?
No. He never told me that they discovered UFOs on the moon. He did mention, what he did mention was that astronauts had seen, had paranormal experiences, in space, and the cosmonauts. Okay. And in terms of UFOs, he says, yes, astronauts have seen UFOs, but all of them that he knew had seen UFOs on Earth, not in the moon or out in space.
Oh, okay.
And so now, mind you, Edgar was a retired military officer. Okay. And they had their own oaths of secrecy, that type of thing. So if something did happen, he wouldn't be telling me. He wouldn't be telling anybody, But
there was a funny thing where NASA they were talking about prosecuting because he had a camera.
Oh, what it was that he actually showed me on his wall. What was a common practice with the other astronauts that had gone to the moon, the other two previous Apollos, they had basically torn up parts of the lunar module when it had hooked up to the part that actually flew back. Okay, they left the bottom part on the moon. Okay, so they would take different parts out and bring it up. Okay, as like souvenirs. Okay.
Yeah.
So what he had, what he showed me that was on the wall was that little handle, that operated, because he was the operator, that going down, operating it, and the speed and direction and all of that stuff. So he basically tore that, unhinged it, whatever instruments he had, and he brought that up. Okay. So what happened was that after, I forgot how many years, NASA had requested that from him, and actually had filed legal papers. This is many years later. And what it was he was talking about UFOs and Roswell and the moon and all. What other astronauts were talking about. Also, one of the other astronauts that was a Gemini astronaut, Gordon Cooper.
Yep.
Then went out and talked publicly that when he was a test pilot in Chuck Yeager's group, I think it was, that Edgar had worked with. Edgar knew all these folks, that he was a test pilot there. He saw a UFO came down, landed, okay, on the where they were testing these planes, and he had filmed it, okay. So Edgar had told me all about that too, before I even came across his video. And so apparently somebody in NASA didn't like him talking about these things publicly. And so they wound up settling, making an arrangement, because all these politicians became involved, because Edgar was a Presidential Medal of Freedom winner, which is that I just talked about that a little
the
while
highest,
the highest award that any civilian can earn, because he had saved the crew of Apollo 13. Edgar told me it was 3 people in that movie. And so finally, these politicians came to bat for him, and let it be. But he showed me that plaque, the Presidential Medal of Freedom, which is a small plaque, and then he showed me that handle and a couple of other things that he had stripped from the moon. I don't recall the other ones, but there was some other gadgetry. I don't know what the hell it was, some electronic stuff.
He took the stick, didn't he, as well?
Yeah, oh, the stick, that's the one that I recognized that was on the wall.
Yeah.
And there was something else, some other electronic stuff that I just don't recall. But I remember there was like 2 or 3 other things there. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wondered if he happened to slip anything that NASA is very much aware of.
No. He he never told me anything. But he did tell me about the paranormal experiences in space, and that other astronauts had seen UFOs while they were pilots. Okay, and Gordon Cooper he told me specifically about. But in terms of the details of the other astronauts, he just told me that they saw UFOs, but on Earth, not on the moon or up there. Mm-hmm. Maybe that part is classified, and he never told me, but he never did. So anyway, getting back to the story here to finish it, I wrote up a detailed description of the world's first comprehensive academic research study of UFO contact experiencers. Okay, I sent it to Edgar, Dr. Rudy Schild, and to Mary, and I said, "What do you guys think of this?" And they all said, "This is fantastic. Let's go with it." So I said, "Mary, would you like to join us?" Mary Rodwell. And at that time, she said yes. And then a few days later, she came up with the name Free. Okay. And so within a few weeks, we had lots of PhD academics that joined us, and some of the world's leading researchers. Like I think we had a conversation off the air a couple of days ago. Kathleen Martin.
Yes.
Very, very well-known researcher. Dr. Leo Sprinkle. He was the first PhD academic to write an article about abductions. This was in the 60s. He wrote about this. And Barbara Lamb, a woman that's been studying UFO abductees for over 40 years. Okay. And this other lady, Denise Stoner. And we had a whole bunch of PhDs. We had neuroscientists. We had physicists, we had PhD psychologists, all joined us, and we all worked together. Said, how do we go about beginning to research this? Okay, so I laid out the framework of what we're going to be doing, and there we started to come up with questions, and we fine-tuned. It took us 9 months to develop that. Okay, and what we came up was 3 surveys. The first 2 surveys were quantitative. Okay. Yes or no, or pick from 1 to 5, your selection. So these were fixed choice answers. And there was 600 questions, a hell of a lot of questions. And then the third phase were qualitative questions, which are open-ended questions. We asked, if you've ever had a medical healing by UFO intelligence, can you tell us about it? So we had people that wrote out, tons of pages for each specific question. Have you ever had what is commonly called an abduction, which is a forced physical taking against your will? Can you describe that? Okay. Have you ever had an out-of-body experience? Please describe it. Have you had a near-death experience? Please describe it. And so we wound up with a ton of data. And then we had a small group of primarily PhD academics that then digested that data and wrote out synopses of this data, and we had 2 other professors that were the co-chairs of the research committee. One was Dr. John Climo, who was a professor for over 40 years, a professor of psychology, and he had basically been a tenured professor writing about the paranormal. Okay, and you just don't see that. Not too many people get tenured, which means they can't kick you out, writing about paranormal topics. And then the other one, and then the other one was Dr. Bob Davis, who was a retired professor of neuroscience, a professor of the brain, a fucking professor of the brain, but he's always had an interest in this stuff, and he's had some paranormal experiences. And so he was the other academic. So, and myself. And so what we discovered, we also had a PhD statistician, okay, Dr. Russell Scalpone, and he crunched out the numbers for us on different statistical methodologies. And what we were able to determine, we had numerous findings, tons of findings, but I could go over some of them in the PowerPoint for your audience members. But if not, I could just orally tell you the generalities of it.
Whatever you feel more comfortable with.
Yeah.
Right, you know.
For your audience members, the ones that are really interested in this topic, and again, this is not bullshit. This is what we wound up with 4 responses from 4,250 individuals. Okay.
So from 4,250, you ended up with 4.
No. 4,250 individuals responded to our surveys. Okay. Not 4.
No. It's when you said before you had 4.
4 researchers that were crunching out and analyzing the data.
That is some work.
Yeah, these are all, like, for example, for the qualitative, where they wrote out the details to 70 questions, we had more than 10,000 pages.
And this is not just from the US either, is it? This is from...
No, it was from over 100 countries.
Wow.
Over 100 countries. This is in the English language survey. We did our surveys in 4 languages. In Spanish, we had over 1,000 individuals that completed our Spanish language survey. Okay. So again, this is, it's never been done before. And our data findings pretty much contradict the bullshit that's circulating in ufology. Okay. And if people really want to get into the details, I'll send those all to you for free. I'll send you our 120-page chapter 1, and I'll send you a summary, a 6-page summary of our data findings. Like if you say, look, I'm not fucking going to read 120 pages, you just give me the super short version. I say, okay, I got that too, I'll send that.
Ray, if you gave us the super short version to what the findings were from all these people, how would you would you summarize that?
Okay, let me give let's say 4 major findings and categories. Okay, the one question we wanted to take a look at was whether these experiences were perceived by these individuals as positive, negative, or neutral. Okay, so we asked that question in more than 25 different ways, because depending how you phrase a question, you'll get a different response. Okay, for example, we asked the question, if you could stop these experiences, would you? Okay, 84% said no, keep it coming, baby, keep it coming. 84. Okay, 60% said no, stop it. Okay. So that was one way of getting at that answer. Okay. Another way was like a fixed choice question. You had to choose one or the other. Okay. And that was, if you had to choose between positive or negative, these experiences, what would it be? 96% said it was positive. 4% said it was negative. Okay. But as I said, we asked it in many different ways. What we discovered was that initially, because we had a question in terms of initially, how would you categorize these experiences? Was it highly negative, slightly negative, neutral, slightly positive, or highly positive? What we discovered was that 37% of the people initially viewed these experiences as negative, either highly negative or slightly negative. 37%, more than 1 out of 3. Okay, but then, well, also what we discovered was that the more experiences you had, over time, your experiences became more positive, or your perception of the experience became more positive. Okay, so at the end of, let's say, 20 years, what you viewed as highly negative now is highly positive. Why? Because your experiences changed over time. You had initially started off, for example, with an abduction, where you had these little grays that appeared. You were frozen on a bed, and these little grays with like a mantid being or a tall gray was like checking you over, and you were scared shit. You were frozen. You could only move your eyeballs. You couldn't see around, and so boom, you're back in your bed or in your body, and you're like, you were scared shitless, but you remember seeing in your bed these little small grays. So for the next few months, you were, defecating in your pants anytime you had that thought. Okay. But then what happened later on? Okay. all of a sudden, it wasn't a little gray anymore that popped in your living room. Okay. It was a human looking being. And the human being said, look, I know you've been thinking about death lately. Okay. Don't fear death. Okay. Let me show you what death is like. And would give them like a near death type of experience. Okay. Where they go through the tunnel, the bright light, and the whole works. Okay. And then boom, they reappear back in their living room with the TV on the whole time. They were like, what the fuck just happened? Okay. So that's where eventually these experiences led, through a series of many experiences over many, many years. What we discovered that most of these experiences towards the later end of their experiences were spiritual teaching type of experiences, okay, about the afterlife. Let's use an example, Whitley Strieber, okay?
Yeah.
That's well known to you, well known to many of the audience members here, okay? When he started off with communion, okay, it was a scary, horrific book. I said scareful, right? What the fuck is scareful? Okay.
No, it's a new word. I'm dyslexic, so I'm not going to question your words.
I was thinking scary and horrific. Okay, that word came out. But anyway, Communion was like the first book that triggered all of the abductees that were existing at that time. Okay, and which brought back flashbacks. Okay, and that set off the whole abduction phenomenon. Okay. People were being triggered by that, okay? And then all the subsequent books that he wrote over the next few years, shortly thereafter, were all these very scary stories of his experiences. Tons of them were paranormal related, tons of them. But it was still, people were like, they remember Communion, okay? Now, he's written all these love and light last few books, okay, about the spirit world. He's communicating with his wife, who is deceased, how he's getting all these spiritual teachings, and now he gives thanks, to our universal creator and to these beings. He gives thanks to them because they brought him spirituality. Okay. So I told them, I said, Whitley, you're the typical person that took our survey. Okay. In the very beginning, they were scared shitless by their abduction type of experience. But towards the end, the vast majority of them are love and light. Okay. Talking about spirituality. And all of these paranormal experiences in between. Okay. So what we discovered was that the more experiences you had, the more positive the experience became. We also discovered that 1/3 of the people had what is commonly called an abduction. Okay. 2/3 of the people have seen UFOs. They've seen beings, but they never had an abduction. Okay, 2/3. So if you just focus on abductions, abduction this, abduction that, abduction this, abduction that, you're going to be missing 2/3 of the people.
But Ray, would you not think that some of these people that have seen these greys, when they say then they may not be aware of that they've been abducted? Like you say, missing time.
Look, as long as these people are not aware, they don't know about it. It doesn't exist. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So I mean, you're trying to prove to me an unproven, fact. Okay.
You're just getting the data.
We're just getting the data, okay? 1/3 recalled an abduction. Now, the vast majority of them recalled the details of their abduction through hypnotic regression, okay? Which later on we told them, don't answer this question based upon hypnotic regression, but a lot of them did, okay? And that's where a lot of the abduction-related stuff. Most of the people, they just remember like little tidbits, okay? And it was after then regressed, then all this other information comes in. Now, we don't even know the validity of this information via hypnotic regression. Why? Because people that have gone through David Jacobs and Bud Hopkins, okay? We even have videos of David Jacobs regressing people. And it was like one leading question after another, okay? We had a video where there was a woman that had a reptilian experience, okay? And this is the wife of Bud Hopkins, had filmed David Jacobs doing this, okay? And he telling the lady, a week ago, I had another person that had come to me with a reptilian experience. And, they raped the shit out of her. They did this, and all of a sudden, asking questions now under hypnotic regression of this lady. What the fuck you think the woman's going to say, after you scared her shitless, and then asking these leading questions. Now, let's discuss now about specific beings. We also ask those questions about specific beings. Okay, what would be the rate of, let's say, the short grays of people that said it was negative, their experience with short grays? What would you take a guess?
30%.
How much? 30?
30% negative.
Okay, 10.5%.
Okay.
That's it. 60% said it was neutral. Okay, the rest said it was either slightly positive or highly positive. Okay,
I only say that because I've interviewed a guy that saw two of them, and it terrified him for 20 years.
yeah, no, that's natural. If what we discovered, well, I'm jumping back and forth with our data, but basically what we discovered is the people that have answered the most highly negative are people that had one or two abductions, but nothing else. That's all they remember, the abduction. They don't remember anything else. They never had any additional experience.
So
those
grays is 10%, 10% negative.
10.5% negative. Okay. You know how many people had experiences with the short grays? Take a guess in our surveys.
I'm going to say 30%.
Okay. It was 1,200 people. Okay. Out of 4,200 people.
Okay.
Okay. So that's a hell of a lot of people have seen short grays. Okay. So for only 10.5% of those people say it was negative, that's a very small number. Okay. Now, we asked that for all the different types of beings. Okay. So these were not responses that some of the folks that were the academics had realized. The researchers knew this because they have been working with experiencers for many, many, many years. Okay. Now, so what we discovered was that only 1/3 of these people have had an abduction. Okay. The people with the most highly negative responses were the people that have either one or two abduction experiences, and that's it. They never had anything else. Okay. The vast majority of people that had an abduction had continuous experiences, but the experiences changed over time. They became much more positive. Okay. Towards the end, they were like Whitley Strieber, getting all these messages of spirituality. Okay. For the vast majority of them. Okay. We also what we discovered was that we asked the abductees, the people who had an abductions. Okay. Have you ever had an abduction? Yes. Okay. If you had an abduction, okay, do you now call yourself a contactee or an abductee? Okay. 70% of these people now call themselves contactees and not abductees. Okay. These are the people that had an abductions now. And that parallels our data because after that initial abduction experience, their experiences evolved and changed. Now, ufology doesn't talk about this. Okay. They don't talk about this. The guy that I spoke with yesterday, okay, his first name is Terry. Okay. So this guy wrote a book about his abduction. And it was like, he even has a website and it was all highly negative and shit like that. But I was talking to him yesterday and he was telling me, I used to view it that way. Not anymore. And he's talking about spirituality. He's talking about all the paranormal experiences he's had. And he says, now I don't see it as negative. I see it as positive because it awakened me. He even talked about that it's like an awakening process. Okay. And this is what all the people that took our survey, have stated as well. Okay. So, but yet this is a guy that has been invited to lecture circuits and radio interviews, and all people care about is alien abductions. And he said, actually, that's a tiny part of his experience because that's what triggered it. And then subsequently is all these other paranormal experiences.
So if out of 4,000 odd people, 1,000 of them had spoke about the greys, but 30% of them said it was negative.
No, 10.5%.
10%, sorry. I'm using my own words.
Yeah. And I could go through
what was the most popular?
Okay, that's a good question. I was going to follow up on that. The grays were not even the most commonly seen type of being, but yet you go to the website, and all it is like this horrible figure of this gray,
my logo.
Yeah, going to eat you up. And to me, it's like that's misinformation. Okay,
I'm sorry.
That's not what people actually see the most. The number one type of being that people describe that they've seen the most is what we coined an energy being. Okay. And it's like pure energy, and it doesn't have a physical form, but yet it's an intelligence that they were interacting with. Either almost all the time telepathic communications with. an energy being. And that was number one. Okay. Number two was the human looking beings. Okay.
Like the Nordic blondes.
They come in different forms, but the vast majority are either the Nordic forms or they look humans, just like us.
Yeah, Travis Walton described them, didn't he? He said that to start off, it was the gray. He had the greys that had him on the table, but then he went into another room and it was a lady and a man.
Okay. Well, this man that I interviewed yesterday, he was on the table and he had the little grays and he called them like little robots, like little servants. And instead of the human looking beings, what he described was like a being that was like mantid looking, like a praying mantis type of being. Okay. Now, what it could easily be is because these intelligence are able to masquerade to make you feel comfortable. So I said, a white guy with blonde hair and blue eyes, he's not going to be, I'm not going to be fearful of someone like that. So they put you in, they put that thought in your head of what you're seeing. But as I said, these are all virtual reality recreations. Okay. That's happening to us. It might not even be a mantid being that we're actually seeing. It could be something totally different. And it could not be aboard a UFO ship. It might be in some other type of reality that this is taking place. Okay.
But I've just when you're saying that, there's a guy that spams this question, good friend of mine, but fifth dimensional beings.
Yeah. Oh no, definitely. I mean, Jacques Vallée said 40 years ago that these experiences, UFO contact related experiences, are multidimensional experiences. And let me just respond to is it Haber Mallow?
Yes.
Yeah, let me just respond to that issue. Okay. There was an interview. There is this well-known podcaster. His name is Jeffrey Mishloff. And he interviewed Dr. Jacques Vallée more than 35 years ago. Mishloff had hair at that time. Jacques Vallée looked a lot like younger. Okay. And he asked Vallée, and Vallée at that time had been researching UFOs and UFO contactees at that point more than 30 years. This man's been doing it for more than 60 years, since the early 60s, whatever time that is. Actually, since the 50s, he was interested in this topic when he was in France as a youngster. So he asked him, he said, do you think these little short grays are multidimensional beings? Okay. And so Jacques Vallée stopped a second, pondered, and he didn't answer his question directly. He says, Jeffrey, we just don't understand space-time. Okay. So by responding that way, he's telling Jeffrey that these are multidimensional experiences. Okay. Because they involve a manipulation of space-time. Okay. So, and Vallée in many of his books actually stated that, throughout many of his books from many, many years ago. And so he knew it back then. And that's why he totally distanced himself from ufology, because ufology, what it's been until recently, is just strict nuts and bolts. All they care about is just photos in the sky, videos, the next tic-tac, And so from my perspective is that, what the fuck has that given us in 80 years since 1947 when they first publicized a UFO in the sky? I forgot that initial case history, that the term flying saucer was coined. What has that methodology, that mindset of just looking at videos and photos, what has that really told us? Okay. The latest tic-tac.
There's a lot of good hoaxes out there.
Well, I mean, what it's told us is that, yes, UFOs exist, okay? And yet they can fly super, super fast or operate super, super fast. They can appear and disappear on a radar, okay? But outside of that, what the fuck have these people taught us in 80 years? Not much, okay? But in our research study, okay, that we developed over a 5-year period, collecting the data for 3.5 years, told us tons of data. Okay, so the first one is, I already told you about the positive, negative, or neutral. Okay, for the different types of beings, again, finishing off on the positive, negative, neutral stuff, we asked for the 12 different types of beings. Okay, we literally had hundreds of different types of beings, but we we asked questions, and we found out the 12 most common types. Now, after the short grays, number 4 was the tall grays. That was at 37.5%, and then after that, I think in the high 20s were the reptilians and the mantid beings. Okay, the mantid beings, again, only like 10% were negative, the responses. Same thing with the tall grays. The reptilians had 22% as negative. Okay, so we want to find out, why were all these beings either at 10% or much less? Like the human-looking beings were like 5%, 4% negative. And the spirit beings, ghosts was number 4, sorry. Ghosts and spirits were number 4. Okay, and then number 5 was the tall grays. Now, we wanted to find out for the reptilians, why 22% of the people viewed it as highly negative. When I asked people in interviews, right, they're guessing, 80% was negative, very large numbers. I said, no, it was only 22%. So when we looked at the open-ended questions, how they responded, have you ever had a contact with a physical being? Yes. It was a reptilian. And then we looked at those answers, okay? And we actually had 644 people that had experience with reptilians. That's a hell of a lot of reptilian people, okay? 644. And so when we looked at their responses, the one that wrote detailed responses, because not everybody wrote it, okay? And so out of those people, what we discovered was that reptilian did not rape their wife, did not eat their children. Barack Obama is not a reptilian, all the bullshit that you read on the internet.
My queen.
Okay, the queen is a reptilian, all this crap that's circulating on the internet. What we discovered was that, David Icke bullshit. That guy's the outside of I won't name other names, but he's in the UK, the biggest con artist that exists in the world. David Icke. The guy's more full of shit than a dump of turd. Anyway, he's the reptilian expert, right? Fucking guy never even fucking met a reptilian in his life, probably. Anyway, we had 644 people. We had literally a couple of hundred wrote out details of their reptilian experiences. Not one person had a negative experience with a reptilian. Okay? Why did you write negative? Well, what we found out was that when most of these reptilian experiences occurred in close proximity. Not like I saw a reptilian, at the top of a hill and shit like that. No, it was like right in your face, like a few feet away from you, and it was like looking at you and stuff like that. That was most of these experiences. And when that occurred, if you could imagine yourself, picture yourself, all of a sudden you're like, washing the dishes or some shit like that, and you hear like a little noise and you look like 2 feet away from you was this being that's like 7 to 8 feet tall, had a body of Arnold Schwarzenegger, ripped with muscles, a fucking crocodile body, okay, little cat eyes, okay, and he's just looking at you, not doing anything, just looking at you. Right there, you're gonna shit in your pants, okay, and then all of a sudden he dematerializes right in front of you, okay, and that's the vast majority of these experiences, okay. Not the reptilian raped my wife and ate my child and shit like that. Okay. So that was why they wrote highly negative, because these people are still traumatized by that experience. Okay.
Stories.
Yeah. Which is quite natural, and then even a lot of people wrote down, look, I wrote down neutral because in hindsight, it scared the shit out of me. Okay. But then years later, upon pondering what had happened, he didn't do anything to me. He was just like looking at me. Okay, so that's why in my survey I put down neutral. Okay, he didn't do anything good, anything bad, but there were a lot of people that had telepathic communications with a reptilian. The most famous person was a member of our research committee, Barbara Lamb. Okay, now Barbara Lamb has written several books about her work with UFO contactees, and she's an elderly lady. She's now almost 90 years old now, I think, and she told us a story where she was in her living room. I don't know if she was vacuuming or what the hell she was doing. And all of a sudden appeared right in front of her a reptilian. And she wasn't scared at all. She didn't miss a beat because she had a lot of people that described to her reptilian experiences. experiences with hundreds of different types of beings. So she didn't blink an eye. And so the reptilian began to communicate with her, saying, like, you're not fearful of me. No, I'm not fearful of you. And then began a rapport with her. Okay. And I don't recall the specifics of it, but if you could just type on Google, Barbara Lamb, Lamb, and reptilian, and you'll pop up an interview where she talks about that encounter. Okay. So we had many, many people that talked about their communication, telepathic communication with a reptilian. And I guess with a lot of these beings, it's once you lose that initial fear. Once you lose that initial fear, then your experiences take off. If you're scared, they discontinue these experiences. You no longer have them. Okay. And another thing about the abduction phenomenon, if you interview Barbara Lamb, Mary Rodwell, Kathleen Martin, and Leo Sprinkle is still alive, as far as I know. He's in his early 80s, 91 or 92 now. All of them will tell you that the abduction phenomenon, they just don't hear these abduction cases anymore. Just a few, maybe, recently. But most of them occurred in the 80s and 90s and the early 2000s. You just don't hear them anymore, And so they don't know whether, what happened there. Okay. So that's just a little side note. That's not coming data from a research study. That's just coming from these people that work with experiencers.
Ray, just answer Richard's question here, because I know you know quite a bit about, and you've spoke about in some of your interviews about remote viewing, or ESP. What is, in terms of the Galactic Federation? Do you know anything about that?
Well, the only thing I could say is that a lot of people, when they wrote out their experiences, they wrote out experiences of being in a group of diverse beings. Okay. And they usually described it like, for example, I have the wife of one of my best friends. She's a PhD psychologist now. Okay. She's not some quack off the street, some crackhead or something. Okay. She's a PhD psychologist. She still has her practice. She's in her about 74 years old, lady, very bright, intelligent. Her husband is a major experiencer, one of the biggest experiencers in the world. And he happens to be one of my best friends. He still lives in Miami. So she told me that she had an experience, and it wasn't a lucid dream. Okay. It was more like she was acting with this woman who's a major experiencer. And then all of a sudden she was seeing, that she was herself in this long table with different types of beings. The table didn't have any legs. It sort of like was floating off the ground. And people were sitting in these chairs, but there was like nothing underneath the chairs. It was like they were being held up. And she described all the beings. And that interaction was there like only a couple of minutes. But she described all the beings in detail, and she was there. And when she interacted with this particular major experiencer, woman, also from Miami, this Haitian lady, now deceased. The Haitian lady was able to project, her encounters and visions in her, like she was reliving them and seeing them. So that's just an example, and that's many examples we read in our research study of experiences similar to that people were like at some type of table with many different diverse beings, and they were talking about mankind, So yes, that's as much as I know about it. We didn't ask any questions in our survey about the Galactic Federation or anything like that, Because,
Can I ask if ever shadow figures come into the equation? Shadow people, what?
We asked that question about shadow people, and yes, it was not an outrageously large number. I don't recall the numbers offhand, but I think to the best of my recollection, it was in the 20-something%. And I had an encounter with a shadow person as well. That was
okay. Let's hear about that. Well, I myself have had like shadow figure, and
they're very common. They're very common, and a lot of people don't talk about it. Okay, but we had a group at one time, which is like an experiencer support group. We had volunteers because we were getting so many emails from people wanting someone to talk to, someone to vent. And Mary Rodwell is always like up to like, her head with so many people wanting to talk to her and people wanting to vent. Kathleen Martin, Barbara Lamb, all of these people. And so what we did is we decided to have a support group for experiencers. And we had various volunteers. At one time, we had like more than 10 volunteers. So this was a Skype meeting with the two ladies that were in charge of that volunteer program. We call it the Experiencer Support Group. And so we were talking with them. And I had this is in my old house in Miami. We had, to this side here, we had a glass door, okay, where you can go outside into the patio, okay. And so all of us saw this this shadowy figure go right behind me, fast, but enough for you to see it, okay. And what it was shadowy, was thin and semi-materialized, okay. And it was dark, but it wasn't like black, but it was more like a mixture between black and grayish color that was semi-transparent, that like streak right behind us. So this one woman starts screaming. He goes, Ray, what the hell was that? What the hell was that? I said, don't worry, it's just a shadow person, like it was a common thing, and she was freaking out, and so yes, that's very common among experiencers. Another friend of mine, a major experiencer, his name is Chris Bledsoe. I visited him at his home, and he and his wife had been seeing shadow people for quite some time, and they described it just like what had happened, what I just explained to you. These dark streaks of like a humanoid person that would be streaking by,
What do you think they are?
Well, what I suspect is that, again, some type of non-human intelligence that's somewhat materialized and dematerialized. And it's to get your attention, like, hey, I visited you, I'm here, because if they wanted to be totally invisible, they could easily do that. That's my best hypothesis. It could also be, again, I really don't differentiate with non-human intelligence between like a ghost or a spirit, that type of thing, because all of this, to me, it's all part of one phenomenon that's a multi-dimensional phenomenon, because all of these non-human intelligence, they all have the ability to manipulate space-time. Okay.
So this is what intrigues me about you, Ray. When you're talking about the fact that prior to 2012, you were an atheist, but you're doing very much a scientific study, and we're talking aliens, we're talking extraterrestrials, we're talking interdimensional beings. Where does God come into this equation?
Okay, let me. I'll continue my discussions. I talked about the first major finding, which is these are mainly positive experiences, but with a nuance. You just can't say they were all positive. No, it's much more complicated than that. Now, the other aspect of is how it changes people. And I'll get to your God question as I answer this question. We had borrowed close to 60 questions from a book that Dr. Kenneth Ring had published in 1988. It's titled The Omega Project. And in that book, he compared 85 people that had abduction-related experiences with 85 people that had near-death experiences. Okay? And so one of the areas, this is a statistical study that he did, okay? And we borrowed many questions from his study into our own study. And so what he discovered was that one of the areas that he focused on is how do these people change? How were they before? How are they now? And he looked at their worldviews, how they view our reality, okay? And they changed exactly the same way. Exactly the same way. Okay. And let me give you some of the changes. These people, all of a sudden, the atheists became spiritual. The people that are religious, they became spiritual. Okay. There was still a subgroup that were still religious, but they became much more highly spiritual. All of a sudden, they became much more ecological. Okay. They became tree huggers. You see a cigarette butt in the street. Hey, what are you doing throwing that cigarette butt in the street? They couldn't kill a little animal, a little cockroach in the house. Like right now, my wife and I, any little animal that comes in the house, we never killed it. We try
Same
to
here.
get,
Yeah.
we get it outside the house. All of a sudden, money's not important to you. Okay, material things, getting new Mercedes Benz every year, for the very wealthy people that had near-death experiences or these UFO-related experiences. All of a sudden, no, that wasn't important. Material things, being well-known, being famous, okay, being egotistical. All of a sudden, the ego went down tremendously. That's why I questioned Stephen Greer whether he ever even had a fucking UFO contact experience, because that guy's got the biggest.
Oh my God, Ray! I can't believe you've got.
He's got the biggest fucking ego in the world, man. There he is, right there. I mean, you ought to type ego and put it right on his fucking forehead.
He's my meme. I've gone blurred.
You got blurred. Yes, yeah. I mean, anyway. Yes. Merry Christmas to you. You misinformation, disinformation thief. Get him out of the screen. Anyway, they become less egotistical. Okay, they become more loving to the fellow human being instead of wanting to exploit them, like Stephen Greer, charging $3,500 a pop to bring you to the desert. Instead of seeing UFOs, you see sandflies. Okay, if you truly, had contact with non-human intelligence, you wouldn't be so blood-sucking thirsty, for money like this guy is. Okay, all right, you wouldn't be buying a mansion in Washington, D.C., over $1 million. You spent $600,000 as a down payment. You own another $1 million home in Virginia. Okay, you wouldn't be so money grabbing, egotistical and materialistic. No. Okay. Anyway, so it totally transforms your worldview. Okay, and what we asked those same questions to over 4,200 people, and guess what? Same numbers, depending on the answer, between 75 to almost 90% of the people underwent a dramatic change. One was related to a universal creator. Okay, we asked a whole series of questions on that, a spirituality. The overwhelming number of these people that had UFO contact experiences, all of a sudden, we're talking about, a universal creator, spirituality, the afterlife. Many of them were actually told by non-human intelligence all aspects of spirituality. And we have it in chapter 1. Okay. Again, info@experiencer.org, info@experiencer.org, and you will see all the spiritual related questions that we asked and how people responded. Okay. So I think it was in the 20s or 30s, depending on the type of question that these actual entities told them about. Even reincarnation, told them about reincarnation, very large numbers. So that was finding number 2, that these people change profoundly, okay, for the better, okay, not like Stephen Greer, okay, they totally changed for the better, okay, and to the point where if like everyone in humanity, all the politicians either had a UFO contact experience or a near-death experience, you wouldn't have world wars. You wouldn't have these massive killings. You wouldn't have all this economic exploitation of each other. We would be treating each other with much more love and respect, for humanity. You wouldn't have the environmental degradation that we're seeing. Why? Because that's how all of these people changed. Okay. And so that was the second major finding. The third major finding is that while commonly ufology sees these experiences as primarily a physicalist phenomenon, okay, you physically saw a UFO, you physically saw a being, okay, the overwhelming percentages of the experiences that people were having were primarily paranormal, okay, and again, it's all in chapter 1. info@experiencer.org. I'll send you a free copy of 120-page chapter 1.
I'll tell you what, Ray, if you can you see where it says private chat?
What was that now?
Can you see where it says private chat? I see
that there. Yeah.
Just type it in there, and I'll copy it and I'll get it up on the screen for the guys to send their information to you.
Okay, yeah, let me get it there. Yeah, that's the That's the email for the organization, info@experiencer.org. So one of the other areas that we wanted to find out was that we asked tons of paranormal related questions. We found out that 80% of these people were having out-of-body experiences. Huge numbers, 80%. Okay, 50% reported a medical healing. Just like our dog was medically healed, 50% had a medical healing. Okay, in terms of ghosts and spirits, like 2/3 of the people had seen ghosts and spirits. Out of those, like another 2/3 actually communicated with that ghost or spirit. Okay, telepathically. Orbs, another 60% had seen orbs. Okay, and then we even asked, I forgot how many questions related to orbs, maybe like 10 questions related to orbs, in terms of the colors, in terms of did it materialize, dematerialize, did it go through objects, the whole works. Near-death experiences, 37% of these people had a near-death experience. That is huge paranormal numbers, okay? Precognition, it was like overwhelming. The vast majority, all of a sudden, after their contact experiences, had heightened precognition, knowing what to, like my wife, for example, she detected a tumor in my back. Okay.
Wow.
She was like walking by me one day, and she was like, and then she goes like this, on her back. She goes, "You got a tumor back there." I said, "What the hell you just did?" So I know you got a tumor. What did you do? You didn't touch me or anything. I just know it. You got a tumor back there. And so I didn't feel anything. I didn't feel bad or anything like that. And she was just harassing me. You need to go to the doctor. You need to go to the doctor. You need to go to the doctor. Right. So I went to the doctor. The doctor
was there a lump? Could you feel the lump? No,
it was back here. She didn't touch anything. Okay. So I went to the doctor, and he felt something back there, and said he ordered me to get I think it was an X-ray. An X-ray. And he looked at it. He says, the X-ray technician looked at it, and not the X-ray technician, the radiologist. Okay. Yeah. The medical doctor that specializes in X-rays and MRIs and CAT scans and all that crap. So he says, "Yeah, you got a lump back there," and he had the dimensions and where it was and everything. And so I had a surgery to get it out, and they tested it to see if it was cancerous or not, and it wasn't. It wasn't cancerous. And then another time, we were going to go to our first UFO conference. Okay, and that was before I had that out-of-body experience. This is like the week before. Okay, this is in the first week of May of 2013. So there was going to be a UFO conference in Sebring, Florida, which is like a 3-hour drive. And so I told my wife, I said, "Let's go up there. Let's go up there for 2 nights. We'll make it like a little honeymoon." I was trying to entice her to go, because to her, she sees everything as angelic, and even the UFOs, these are angels, and I could see why. And now
my wife is a bit like that. My wife's from Ecuador, and she's extremely religious, and she's kind of like, sometimes she's telling me that the UFOs that I'm talking about angels. So I totally get that.
Yeah, I've done a 180 back, okay, because now I see the intelligence that's been dealing with me. I call them modern angels, because they have all of the abilities of what we think is an angel, the abilities of an angel, okay, the ability to heal, the ability to materialize, dematerialize, to appear in any way that they want, okay, which is 3-dimensional. It's from other reality, but interacts with us in this reality. It's able to heal, miraculously healing, like our dog, okay? So these are all the definitions of an angel, all right? Not from a religious perspective, from the Catholic Church or the Protestant Church perspective of an angel, but the very similar characteristics. So anyway, what we discovered was that people were primarily having not physical experiences. Like in my case, for example, I had 4 UFOs. 3 of them were very, very large, okay, that I've seen. And a being, I only saw a being once. That's it, in my living room. But yet, over a 3-year period, it was like one paranormal experience after another.
What being was it?
Oh, the energy being that I described to you earlier in my living room.
So what do these energy, so for anybody who's in the chat, and probably for some of the people I've interviewed before that have spoke about things that they've seen, because I've never seen an energy being, what does it look like?
but all sorts of different types of configurations. Okay, I had an individual who was in the Navy. He was an engineer in a plane. The plane was going to crash. All of a sudden, the propellers was one of those old planes that had a propeller and came on fire. Okay. And they didn't have enough time to go to the major airfield. Okay. They had to land because he said these are these huge planes and had all this petroleum, or whatever fuel, in it. And if it would have crashed, it would have just blown to smithereens. So they were about to land in this older field, and they knew that older field had all this debris on it. Okay. And so all of a sudden they went to land on it. Okay. On that field. And all of a sudden they said, that's it, we're going to blow up, because it had all this debris on the field. And so he popped out of his body, and everything was now in slow motion. He saw a Coca-Cola can, he described it like in slow motion, go through the air right in front of him. All the debris in the field, were going like this. And he was like looking at himself, his body inside the plane, sitting in the seat, like in slow motion. He had flown out of his body. And then that lasted a certain period of time. And then all of a sudden he was back in the back into his body. Previous to that, he was in the Azores. And everyone there, they had a U.S. military base in the Azores. I think it was the Azores, off the coast of North Africa, like, 1,000 miles in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean somewhere. And they have an Air Force base there. And so he said everybody in the base, including himself, saw a UFO. He said then they had these people, these men coming. They were all dressed in business suits, and they were interrogating the people that I had seen it. And it wasn't a ton of people that had seen it, but he was one of them. And they interrogated him. And he also described, after he had that out-of-body experience, he then described he was in his living room. And the living room opened up a portal, okay? And out from that portal came this immense energy, this ball of energy, okay? And that ball of energy started telepathically communicating with him, and giving him a spiritual message. And he knew it was associated to that experience that he just had from the plane, because it was either that same night or the next day. I forgot the total details. His name is Tony Woody, Tonywoody.
Now I get why people, well, yourself and some others are saying UAP, because that could, if someone saw that thing, not necessarily a being, people could think unidentified, that is a UAP. Kind of.
Yeah, I mean, what we documented in our research there was that the vast majority of people did not see a saucer-shaped configuration or a physical configuration. They saw many different light phenomenon in the sky. Okay, and that's why that term UAP is the best terminology. People have also seen things that was like a light configuration. All of a sudden, boom, it changed into a physical form. Okay. And then all of a sudden it separated into three different pieces, and now it's three orbs in the sky. You see where I'm getting at? And just calling it unidentified, flying object or flying saucer, that doesn't give it credibility of the complexities of the phenomenon of what people. I
mean, you've not seen a flying saucer as such, have you? You've seen.
No. Oh no. That object that I saw the last time, that was a physical object, and it was like cylinder. Like, as I said, it was twice the size of a school bus. But in terms of a saucer shape, no. It's like the best way to describe it was like a long cylinder, like a long cylinder, silverish color.
We spoke,
and that was with this fellow Mike Marburg, who you might want to get on your show and interview him, because he runs a CE5 group, and he's had tons of experiences, including paranormal experiences.
Yeah, I'd love to. Anybody that's going to add something to this field. I mean, I don't even want to call it ufology anymore, because
it's not ufology. No, it's
something more.
What I call this Okay, and this is the title of our new book. Okay, you saw the cover of it. Okay, the title of our new book, and this is the Consciousness and Contact Research Institute, is titled "A Greater Reality."
Would you like to screen share the cover, or have you got anything
Oh,
on your
yeah,
computer?
sure, I could do that. Yeah, I would have to look it up, but let me see, share screen, and let me application windows. I would have to go to
Just when you've got it, Ray, we'll pop it up. But yeah, so when's the new book out?
yeah, the new book is out April the 30th. Okay, no, April 15th. I'm sorry, April 15th.
So
And,
we've got Beyond UFOs in the description below that people can get that on Amazon. But if they do contact you at experiencer.org, you'll
yeah,
send them 100 pages.
I'll send what the cover looks like, because the book is still in production, and the book is going to be the title of the book is "A Greater Reality: The New Paradigm." Okay, the new paradigm of non-local consciousness, the paranormal, and the contact modalities. What this is, we have like over 20 PhD physicists in our organization, not physicists, academics, retired, most of them retired academics, okay? And people in the field of near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences, the UFO field, remote viewing. We've got one man who is probably the godfather of remote viewing. Okay, we have probably the leading researcher right now of near-death experiences, Dr. Jeffrey Long. He's the co-chair of our organization. Okay, and I won't go into all the list of all the people. Okay, all of us, we hypothesize that all of these experiences is actually one phenomenon. Okay, and what ties it all together is that this is interdimensional. And what's taking place, it's a manipulation of space-time as we as humans are interacting with via what is called non-local consciousness. We're tapping into these other realities. Okay, and it's the people that usually have had one of these experiences where they've pierced the veil of our reality. Okay, via near-death experiences, via UFO contact, via out-of-body experiences, et cetera, et cetera. These people that do astral travel, for example. These people are now, the way if you could think of it is like our brain is like a lid, a cover, okay? And nothing can come in, okay? But the people who've had these experiences have like little tiny holes now, okay? So our brain waves, for the audience to have an understanding of it. It's not actually how it works, but are able to tap in and retrieve that information of the multiverse. So because of these experiences, the multiverse gets triggered, okay? And we begin to having these contact experiences, diverse contact experiences, okay? And these are normal people. These are not crazy people that have been diagnosed with medical ailments because 1/3 of the people in our organization, these are highly credible people, academics, and they've 1/3 of them have had paranormal experiences. Okay, and so and all of them became interested because they wanted to study the phenomena academically. Now, all of them hypothesize that it's much more complicated than that. Okay, now what you're showing there on the screen is the first book. Okay,
Yes.
Beyond UFOs, and that the reason why we did that book was in order to be able to compare UFO contact experiences with the other contact modalities, out of body experiences, near death experiences, remote viewing, hallucinogenic journeys, ghosted spirits, et cetera. In order to compare it to that, we needed data about what the hell is happening with the UFO contactees. That data never existed. Okay, all you had was me telling my story, Travis Walton telling his story, another fellow telling his story. You had these anecdotal case studies. We never had data. And now our book provides the data, and we're able to show tons of similarities between, for example, near-death experiences and the UFO contact experiences. I already told you a couple of them. First of all, how these people change. Okay. Secondly, many of these people that have had near-death experiences have had numerous paranormal experiences afterwards. Okay. One of the major commonalities is seeing ghosts and spirits after you've had an NDE. Okay. We've had, I interviewed the lady that was the head of the International Association for Near-Death Studies. Her name is Dr. Yvonne Kaysen, and she's actually with that group, ICC, that you thought I was associated with. Okay.
Oh, well, I did find because
consciousness and contact, whatever. But
yeah.
no, it's not. It's not that group. It's her name is Yvonne Kaysen, Kasson. Okay, she coined the term spiritually transformative experiences. Okay, she used to be the head, like a couple of years ago, of IONS, the International Association of Near-Death Studies. Okay. After she had like 5 NDEs, and this is a medical doctor. Okay, she told me that she began seeing ghosts and spirits, tons of them, after her NDEs. Okay, so that's just an example of the relationship there. Communication, how does it take place with an NDE and UFO contact? Telepathically. Okay, it's telepathic contact. Both phenomena involve out-of-body experiences. Okay, as I told you, 80% of the people that have had UFO contact experiences have had out-of-body experiences. A lot of people that have had abduction-related type of experiences, they talk about going out of body and like going through a door and being brought to another reality. Okay, so it's the astral travel aspect of it is common to both of these experiences. Okay, in terms of the most common type of beings that are seen. Okay, the top 4 beings, 3 of those top 4s are involved with near-death experiences, which means the energy being, and that's usually what the being that people describe as God, the universal creator. That's it's almost always in an energy being form. Sometimes it takes a physical shape, of a being, okay, of a physical being, but the vast majority it's like an energy being format. The second most common being that people see is a physical being. Okay, in a near-death experience, they see these people that look like physical beings, physical people. Okay, then the ghost and spirit, which is the 4th. Okay, they see those in also in near-death experiences. So 3 out of the 4 are seen also in near-death experiences. Okay, the only exception is the short grays. But I've spoken with 5 people that have had near-death experiences that when they died, they were actually brought to a perceived area where it had all these people coming up to them that said, look, it's, and I'll say the person's name, Ezekiel, this man's name, Ezekiel. That's his real name. And he was brought to a huge UFO craft, a huge, gigantic UFO craft. Okay. Where he could, he looks just like a UFO inside, round, cylinder, large, and just like a near-death experience. All these people came up to him, knowing who he was. They were like, "Hey, Ezekiel, how you doing? You okay?" Very similar, like a near-death experience. And he had a heart transplant. He had someone else's heart while he was having this, and he had also had an experience with a short gray. Okay, he said that the short gray. One time he was at a stop sign. He stopped at the stop sign. This little tiny gray appeared right in front of him, looked at him, and then quickly ran and jumped over a fence. Okay, and he's had 2 other near-death experiences. So here's a man that has had experiences with short grays. He's had 3 NDEs, and in his last NDE, the most profound one, he was brought aboard a UFO ship. Okay, this other woman, she was on YouTube. She was eating dinner, right? She was eating, she was a heavyset young woman. And she said she choked on her food. And then she literally died there. And she had to be resuscitated, okay? But she went, and she described it to a huge area, and these little grays were attending to her, okay? Now, was this a mixed near-death experience? But it wasn't a near-death experience. That was actually these grays had a relationship with her and brought her to get medical healing, to get resuscitated. We don't know. The only thing is that she described that she had died. She was resuscitated, and she was aboard this perceived craft where these little short grays attended to her.
Ray, can I ask, when you're describing this and you're describing people that are having near-death experiences and they're seeing grays and seeing craft, when you're putting this jigsaw together,
it's not tons of people now. Okay,
okay,
I'm
but
just telling you, based upon my work doing this.
So what are UFO? What are craft-looking things doing in what somebody would presume is kind of the afterlife?
Okay, let's now get into the third major finding, okay, and the fourth major finding. Okay, we talked about this mainly being positive, and again, with a it's extremely complex, like I went over. This positive, negative, and neutral type of stuff. Secondly, is transformative. Okay. Third, these experiences are primarily paranormal. They've had some physical experiences, but it's overwhelmingly paranormal experiences that these people are going through. And number four major finding is that these experiences involves a manipulation of space-time. Why do I say that? Because 50% of the people were brought to other realities. Okay. People were brought to like the spirit world. They were giving spiritual teachings of the afterlife. Okay. By both, primarily not the short grays. It was these other types of beings. But a lot of their earlier experiences started with the short grays and evolved into the other types of beings. Okay. Involving the afterlife, teachings about reincarnation, that when we die, we are actually spiritual beings, et cetera, et cetera. Now, in terms of what this is, what actually is going on, this has been the world's most complex jigsaw puzzle, because Alan Hynek, towards the end of his life, he realized that these experiences were not just physical. They were not just both nuts and bolts. Okay, it was both physical and psychic, which means in their language, paranormal type of related. Okay, Jacques Vallée, like I told you before, knew that 40 years ago because he was writing about that connection. Okay, and that's why he was ostracized from ufology, and he himself self-ostracized himself from ufology, because you go to these ufology conferences and all it is nuts and bolts. And anytime they talked about experiences, it's all abduction this, abduction that, anal probes here, anal probes there, that was the bullshit that you get in one of these UFO conferences. And it is to this day. Okay. And so, exactly. and so that's why, to me, the field of ufology is a bankrupt field that's filled with misinformation and disinformation. And part of it is because they just don't know any better, because they've never done the research. No one has ever bothered to read what we wrote. Here we are, an organization filled with all of these PhD academics. We've done the world's first comprehensive academic research study of UFO contact experiences, and they don't fucking care. They rather give their little lectures that they're now the experts on UFO contact experiences, and they've never done any research on it, themselves. Richard Dolan, is a classic case. Now he's writing articles and books about the contact experience. Now, did this man ever research that phenomenon? No. Okay. Was it he bases information on talking to people, talking to people, and so is that fucking research? That's just being a fucking asshole and coming off like everything with his ego. Put that ego thing in there, that ego button in there, put that in there again, for Richard Dolan. Okay. He called our study, what we did, woo-woo science. Why? Because we talked about the paranormal. We talked about the multiverse. Okay. Yet we have a PhD from Princeton University, Dr. Claude Swanson, Dr. Rudy Schild, okay, PhD from the University of Chicago, one of the world's leading, schools in physics, and has been a professor at Harvard for 45 years. Dr. Dean Radin, okay, who is the lead scientist at the Institute for Noetic Sciences and has done research on the psi phenomenon for over 25 years. Edgar Mitchell. We had a PhD physicist as well from Caltech in our group, who didn't want to go public with our experiences. We had Dr. Bob Davis, a PhD in neuroscience, a professor of the brain, okay, et cetera, et cetera. So here's this man who's a fucking historian, okay, calling our research woo-woo science, someone who has never done any research about it. And he is probably the most credible of the people that are out there, speaking. And so is you go to these conferences, and it's I don't mingle with these people, because they're totally non-credible, from my perspective. These are just people that make a living out of this. They need to sell the next book. They need to get their paycheck, for the next conference. That's how they make their living. I don't. I'm an attorney. I don't need to be a snake oil salesman.
When we're talking about mingling, and again, I told you about David, and I wish I had the picture now on me, but well, I need to blur his face out though.
Yeah.
But when he's with you and Travis Walton, in terms of Travis, how did you get along with Travis and his experience? Is he spiritual in this?
Well, there's a public side of Travis, and then there's a non-public side of Travis. Okay, and we were, I think I might know who you're talking about. Okay, and it was just
don't mention his surname if you know who he is.
I totally forgot what this man's name and what he looked. I know what he looked like. Okay, he was American. I don't think he was from the UK.
No, he's American.
He was American. Okay, yeah, and he was a taller guy. He was maybe 6 foot tall or something like that. Yeah, and so anyway,
I had a long conversation with him apparently.
Yeah, what Travis told us, he said, because he basically gives the same lecture for like whatever it is, 40 years. It's the same fucking story, 40 years. But he's the most famous name from the contact experiencer perspective, and he gives the abduction story. Okay, but what he's changed recently is that he says that he now believes that it was a benevolent mission that they did to him. They actually saved him because he apparently got too close to the craft.
Yes,
and that triggered like some type of magnetic, or I don't know the appropriate scientific term for it was.
Yeah, they was fixing what
they were fixing him. What not what they did, what the ship did, because he got too close to it, and it had like these mechanisms to prevent people getting close, that type of thing. And so they basically picked them up and fixed them. That's what he says now. And he says that they weren't, they didn't do anything bad to him. But what it was for him, like so many other people, was a scary experience, which is, totally understood. And so,
but does he think it's anything spiritual?
Well, here's the thing. He then went on and he started talking about that he's had tons of paranormal experiences. And we even got into the topic of spirituality, and he started going not into details, but in generalities. Because he didn't want to tell us all that side of him, because what that does is that it ruins his meal ticket, from my perspective.
Yeah.
He didn't tell me, but for me, he's got a gig where he's still selling, tons of these books. He's being invited to all these conferences. He sells his literature, his signatures, his books, and stuff like that. And I don't know whether he gets paid under the table by these conference organizers, but he's one of the main attractions. People don't come to listen to Rey Hernandez. Like, for example, my last presentation I made was the Contact in the Desert, okay? And I was like shocked at how many people there. There was like over 5,000 people, I was told. And there was these 2 huge hotels. And they were completely full just with people attending that conference, right? Now, for my lecture, there were not even 30 people that attended the lecture, okay? But for David Bullshit Wilcox, okay, the guy had like 2,000 people lining up, and they were turning them away at the door, and they had paid like $75, to see this guy, So this guy was like ka-ching, 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 ka-ching. And meanwhile, Rey Hernandez had just finished this 5-year academic research study with all of these professors with a gigantic 820-page book filled with data, of what is really happening with the phenomenon. But people, they don't care about that. They're not interested. They want to be entertained. They want to listen to Corey Good's bullshit, about being up to Mars, 20 or 30 different times. Captain Randy Kramer being up to Mars with Corey Good and killing 10,000 reptilians on Mars, protecting the Mars colony. And all of a sudden, they were up there 20 years each time, but when they came back, they were like young again, And they want to be entertained like a fucking comic book, That's what people are paying the money. Same thing with Corey Good, ka-ching, 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 ka-ching. The guy charges, tons of money to speak at conferences. Everybody knows this, How was the guy living before he became famous? Where was he living and how was he living? Look it up. Okay, and now is he now? How much is he? How much money is he making? Now you know he doesn't report it to the IRS. You know, a lot of that cash. Okay, but what it is that these people are living off of the profits from bullshit. Okay, and that's what sells. Okay, fear and entertainment sells. Okay, academic research study data does not sell. Okay. And so here you had me going to this huge conference called Contact in the Desert. If there's anyone that has fucking ever had contact, it was myself and those people that took our surveys. And yet that guy with the Don King hair, you know, with the ancient aliens guy, he had like up the wazoo, you know, up the wazoo, thousands of people lining up to listen to his lecture. They were paying $75 a pop, you know, to listen to this guy, you know. And I'm like, you know, saying to myself, what the fuck? This is fucking ancient aliens. Here I got a book with real fucking aliens, you know, and no one fucking cares. They rather care about ancient fucking aliens. I said, you know, you want to learn something instead of listening to bullshit, you know, listen to what people are telling us in this book. You know?
The thing is, Ray, and this is the problem with it, and I've realized this over time, that people, it's like you said, people want to be entertained, and they want to hear these crazy ass stories. But when you're touching upon the whole thing, the paranormal aspect of it, people are like, no, you can't mix that in with it. You know, they step away, and then they think that's the crazy part.
Well, if they listen to some of the stories that people have had, it's crazy as a motherfucker. These stories.
And I'm with you on this,
so
by the way.
You want to listen to crazy shit? Listen to experiencers. Okay. I mean, I could go on for the next week telling you one story after another. Okay. These people that I know. Okay. Like, for example, I told you there's the PhD psychologist. She's married to a guy who's a retired DEA agent. Okay, I saw the placards on his wall. Okay, the certificates. The guy brought down Manuel Noriega. Okay, they developed a movie script. They're going to have a movie about this guy, but he doesn't talk about the UFO shit. Okay, but yet he's one of the biggest contact experiencers in the world. Let me tell you one of the craziest shit in the world. Okay, I could tell you about him. He's had tons of it. Okay, but all of a sudden. He had this jade statue of this guy that looked like Buddha, this fat guy, Chinese looking guy in his garb, you know, and a real jade. It wasn't the fake, you know, crap. It was real jade statue. All of a sudden appeared in his home. Okay. He has a whole shelf and encasing that you open up and stuff like that with all apports. Apports are physical things that materialize, okay, in his house. I mean, it's unbelievable the shit he's got in there, okay? And his wife has verified all of this, right? And so, mind you, this is a guy that caught someone. He was working with the DEA.
Mr. Davey Cooper, thank you.
A DEA working in the Dominican Republic. He worked all throughout Latin America, okay? And all of a sudden, he was told that they caught these two pilots in this little airfield, right, with a propeller plane, okay? And we want you to interrogate them with a CIA guy, you know, that also worked with drugs, because they both work very, very closely, right? So after like a short while, Alberto tells the CIA guy, he goes, these are the pilots for Manuel Noriega, right? The whole plane was filled with coke, okay, ready to be dropped off in Miami, right? And so they immediately stopped the interrogation. They called Washington, D.C. They found out from the State Department, look, let these guys, cut them loose, put them on a charter plane back to Panama, right? Keep the plane and keep the coke, okay? So a month later, he came back with instructions, okay, from the CIA and from the State Department, and with a confidential paper, you know, secret paper, whatever, and delivered to him by someone from the agency, and it said, we already have a prearranged date for you to meet with the top man from Noriega, another colonel, okay, it's like his right-hand guy, okay, and there here's the list of all the bank accounts that Noriega had, with the name of all of his children, his wife, even his mistress, the bank numbers, the countries, the whole shit. I said, look, you can keep all your fucking money, okay? You could bring your mistress with you with all the bank accounts that she has that you have tried to hide. We know where the fuck your money is, okay? But we want you to leave Panama in 30 days, okay? So he delivered that message, to this top colonel, with Noriega, right? Finally, they got word, fuck you, I ain't leaving. Okay, what happened? Like a few months later, the U.S. military invasion of Panama. Okay,
Oh, wow.
so this is the guy that was telling me all of these fucking details. Okay, and some other stories as well. I mean, really fucking crazy stories with Duvalier, the dictator of Haiti. The Dominican Republic. Okay, how they had tried to assassinate him a couple of times, in Venezuela and shit like that. So I mean, this is the real deal, but yet he's the world's fucking one of the world's major experiencers. Okay. I won't go into some of his stories because they'll just take up a long time. But if people want to be entertained, all you need to do is to read some of these stories of some of these people, or to put it into a movie, which a lot of people don't want that because these are just such crazy experiences that people are having. We have a medical doctor; she's a pediatrician, a pediatrician, and I won't tell you the state, okay? But she works in a hospital, taking care of sick kids all the time, okay? She works for a 48-hour shift, two 24-hour shifts. That's her work, okay? And then, and yet she's a major experiencer, huge experiencer. She's had 2 NDEs. She's had several OBEs. She's seen numerous ghosts and spirits of deceased people in her hospital that she works. After her latest NDE, she's seen 12 UFOs. 5 of them were these huge triangle-shaped crafts, okay, that were like horizon to horizon. Twice they flew right above her and her husband, where they saw the whole part underneath these crafts. Okay, she's had 3 Sasquatch experiences. 2 of them are up close. Okay, and yet you're talking to a highly intelligent, articulate woman, that has had these experiences. So you want to be entertained. Okay, there's tons of stories that are out there. Okay,
Just nobody's touching on them.
But again, these are not insane people. These are not people that are out there selling their books. Like Corey Good and David Wilcox.
So when we talk about, I mean, quick, because we've been going for nearly an hour and a half, and I don't, we can't. We at some point, I could speak to you for like a day. I really could, and I hope you will come back on the show. But before we get on to, I want to know kind of the future of what you're doing.
Okay.
What I want to ask you is, because you've mentioned like a lot of the people who are quite, they're the ones that you can just tell they're full of shit. What do you think of Bob Lazar?
I really don't know. I never talked to him. I know I've spoken with George Knapp. I interviewed George Knapp, and he believes him to be highly credible. But I cannot comment on people that I don't know about. I know a lot of intimate information from Stephen Greer, because I know of a medical doctor that worked very closely with him in the 1990s, the early 90s. I also know about the skeleton. I know everything about that skeleton. Okay, how Greer. That little Alta skeleton that he used in that movie, okay? That's all bullshit, He knew it was 100% human, okay? Because I know the guy
Dr. Gary Nolan that was doing the research with Greer, and he took that to TTSA, didn't he? And then they said that
I don't know about that part. What I can tell you is that there was a man, he's deceased now, Dr. Virgilio Sanchez Osejo. He was a major ufologist that focused on Latin America. Okay, and he was also on Dr. Alan Hynek's board of I think it was the organization was CUFOS, the organization that Hynek had towards the end of his life, and they used to travel to Latin America together to investigate contactee cases and abduction cases. And why I know that was proof, because Virgilio sent me photos of him and Hynek meeting with these experiencers, and I knew those cases. They were very well-known cases in Latin America. And one was when he came down to Miami to interview this man who was taken and reappeared like 3 days later, just like Travis Walton. I think it was before Travis Walton became famous, except that case never got any publicity. Okay, and I could tell you all about it. And Virgilio wrote about it in one of his books. Okay, and I have a picture of him and Alan Hynek and this man, this Cuban man, and his wife and his family. and Hynek was young at that time, and Virgilio looked like a much younger man. I think this must have been in the 60s. I forgot the date, the late 60s. And so Virgilio was a real deal, And so he told me that he was informed that there was a case in Chile, in the Atacama, this desert town in Chile, where people described a UFO landing. And out of the UFO came all these little creatures, these small creatures, okay? So he eventually wrote a book, and you can look it up on Amazon. It's written in Spanish. It's titled UFO Pets. He did an English translation, which is a horrible translation of it, okay? But it's titled UFO Pets, and that was about his research study out there in Atacama. So he was there one day, and he was in a bar. He was having a beer, and he saw all these people mingling around near the bartender, where the bartender was. So he got up, and he went to see. And what it was is the man had taken out a shoebox, and he was charging, the equivalent of like a US dollar, whatever, for people to see it. And it was that little skeleton. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so Virgilio, naturally, he had a camera, during that time period. It was like one of those the film that you had to develop, And so he questioned the guy. He said that he bought it from this guy that that had dug it up and shit like that, And he asked him where it was, approximately where it was, and he took pictures of it, and he had it in a little shoebox with like cotton, okay, and he was charging people money to see it, right? So Virgilio was the first man ever to write an article about this with a photo, and then he published it in Ufology review. At that time there was nothing on the internet; it was all a printed paper, that they circulated to others. So he had mailed it into this guy who publishes that UFO journal, and then it got sent off to other people. And it was well known among the ufologists in Latin America and in Spain. Okay, so anyway, this guy from Barcelona, Spain, this well-known ufologist, I forgot his name. I guess if I could Google, Barcelona ufologist, his name would pop up. So he told me that he called Virgilio. He said, "Look, Virgilio, I read about, your story." He says, "Do you still have the contact information of that bartender?" And Virgilio said, "Yes, And so he gave it to me, and he says, "I want to buy it." Okay. So Virgilio told me the story that this guy from Spain flew in and purchased that. Okay. From this guy. So he even said he smuggled it through customs in Spain in his sock. He wrapped it around a gauze, cotton gauze all around, and he put it in his sock, and that's how he got it through customs. Okay. And so there, while he was there, he had it tested both for DNA, and he told me at that time they didn't have the sophisticated DNA stuff that they got now, but they had preliminary DNA. And then also someone that studies anatomy at the university, and he said this is a fetus skeleton, and it probably was aborted, and because of the lack of humidity, the temperature, it became that small. But this is a human, fetus skeleton, whatever. And then the DNA result came back, 100% human, And so and he had those reports. So Stephen Greer found out about it. Now this is what he told me. Okay, this was Virgilio told me. Okay, he said Stephen Greer found out about it. He contacted the ufologist in Barcelona, Spain. Okay, and so he purchased the intellectual property rights. That means to market, that little skeleton, and also he sold, scrapings, to take a DNA sample, that type of thing. And someone went over. Virgilio didn't say who it was. He just said someone. It wasn't Greer. Came over and did that. Okay, and then he all of a sudden, it came out all over the media that Stephen Greer is doing this documentary on this little alien creature. And Virgilio was like pissed off. He called that guy. He said, "What the fuck? You knew it was 100%, human. Did Greer know?" He says, "Yeah, Greer knew about it because he gave him that report." So Greer was using that basically as a sales pitch to draw, attention to his movie. But he said it was all bullshit. It was all fabricated. And then eventually they did a DNA sample. It was a professor at Stanford University, or an academic affiliated with Stanford. I think it was that guy that you said,
Gary Nolan. Yeah.
Gary Nolan, and it did come up. It was 100% human DNA. Okay, and they traced the DNA back to the people in that Andean region. From Chile. They were able to do that with the sophisticated DNA test that they did.
Well, Dr. Gary Nolan took it to TTSA, and Stephen Greer made a video about it, and he was really pissed off, saying that TTSA have he was almost saying that TTSA have paid off Gary Nolan with this anaconda.
Well, it's 100% human. What the fuck can they do about it? I think whoever told you that is bullshit. Because he publishes reports widely out.
No, that's what Stephen Greer was saying. Stephen Greer did a video saying that TTSA.
And then he's full of shit, for saying that. Because Nolan published the whole results publicly, in a scientific paper that he released to the public. I remember looking at it, and so, what the fuck would TTA, whatever that TikTok group want to do with it? It's just 100% human.
What do you think of the TikTok group?
Huh?
What do you think of the TikTok group before we move on?
I mean, they're a mainstream materialist group, publicly, okay? But I think privately, for example, I have a picture of that guy, Elizondo, with our book on his desk.
Okay, that's nice.
Okay, isn't that nice?
Yeah, that's good. That's pretty cool.
He had a desk, and clearly you saw, Beyond UFOs on his desk right there. And he was, someone sent me that picture. I don't know who took it or whatever, but they sent me and said, "Look, Ray, look what the hell he's got on his on his table." It was actually on his desk, and the desk had like a little shelf right next to it, and they had our book, like it was like right on his table. So I know that these people, for example, Eric Davis always posts on our Facebook group. Okay, Eric Davis is an astrophysicist. Okay, he's had contracts with Hal Puthoff. Okay, they worked together for 30 years. Okay, and they had all these contracts from military intelligence to focus on warp speed, the physics of developing new technology to go faster than the speed of light or whatever. All this new physics technology. I really don't know a lot about it, but I remember reading about it. And so he always posts on our CCRI Facebook site, okay? Like a little checkbox and shit like that, So I know he's there. And so I know he's interested in what we're doing, okay? But what it is that I know one person that's in our group that has very close contact with those TikTok people, okay? I won't tell you, the privileged information that we had, but these people know. These are people associated with Bob Bigelow, okay?
Yeah.
And he's the funder for all the TikTok, okay? It's not that rock star asshole, asshole Tom DeLonge who's totally fucking illiterate, It's not that guy. And I know because Bob Davis and I had a conversation with this guy, and he's he comes off like an eighth grade dropout, totally clueless. So I know he was being used and manipulated, that saying that we need to throw a nuclear bomb out in space so we can kill off all these UFOs that are in space. That's the guy that's that's supposedly heading this. No, I don't think so. No. The big chief behind all this was Bob Bigelow, because where is that group affiliated with now? It's in Las Vegas, and that's Bigelow headquarters. Okay, and
interesting.
Oh yeah. Oh
so
yeah.
Before we wrap this up, where is Rey Hernandez going? What is the future?
Okay. As I told you before, the reason why we did this UFO study was because there was zero data on the UFO contact phenomenon. Okay, and then I gave your audience members a very quick summary of the 4 major findings, but within there's like tons of other findings, okay, which totally contradict the field of ufology. Okay, so we now hypothesize, okay, that this is a multi-dimensional type of experience, okay, involving what is called a manipulation of space-time. Okay, and because it involves a manipulation of space-time, so is near-death experiences, so is out-of-body experiences, so are ghosts and spirits. Okay, these are non-human intelligence from some other type of reality. Okay, that we are interfacing with. Okay, and we don't know how this works. You know, we can only speculate. We're going to be publishing an article that Dr. Edgar Mitchell did, which is magnus opus. You know, his most important work that he published 1997, I think it was, and nobody knows about that paper. Okay, so we're going to be publishing it in our first volume of our book, and that is his theory of a quantum hologram theory of consciousness, which he talks about the quantum hologram. And where he talks about how humans are using non-local consciousness and tapping into the information fields of our reality to tap into sources of information. And this is what these highly advanced intelligence also have that ability to do, but a much, much more, you know, highly evolved type of structure at a multi-dimensional, you know, for lack of a better term, you know, level. And so all of us, and as I said before, we've got many major names. If you send me that email, whoever is listening to me, at info@experiencer.org, I will send you a brief summary of this new organization called Consciousness and Contact Research Institute. We have a list of the individuals involved in this. For example, one is Stephen A. Schwartz. He was doing remote viewing, okay, way before the Stanford Research Center, okay, who developed what we now know as coordinate remote viewing, based upon Ingo Swann's principle. And but so this guy was doing that, but not the coordinate aspect of it, but in terms of astral traveling to see images and seeing fields of information. Okay, and now he's one of the world's leading scholars on local consciousness and the paranormal. His name is Stephen A. Schwartz. You can look it up. Stephen A. Schwartz. Okay. We also have Gary Schwartz. The man received a PhD from Harvard University in psychology. He became a tenured professor at Harvard University. Then Yale University lured him, and he became a tenured professor at Yale. And I think he was there a total of 20 years. And then he got lured by the University of Arizona, because what happened with Gary Schwartz? He heard a voice talking to him, okay? And it was like a telepathic communication. And so he wanted to understand, what the fuck was this, you know? And so he suspected it was a deceased, you know, entity, deceased spirit. So University of Arizona lured him away, and it gave him a huge laboratory with tons of money. And now he has a laboratory where he's studying channelers and communicating with deceased entities to see if they could interfere. Let's say, for example, here's a beam of light. What do you call it? Those pencils that beam laser
yeah, laser pen.
Yeah, let me just give you an example. Okay, he has a sophisticated machine that's like a laser pointer. So he has not a laser pointer that you buy in the store and shit like that, a real fucking laser instrument
for your skin.
Yeah, and so he's had the channeler, the spiritualist type of person that's totally isolated in a room that's shielded, totally shielded. Okay, she doesn't even know what the experiment is, and all of a sudden at certain points, okay, the woman will get an instruction, okay, to tell this particular laser to go 50% and cut to 50%, right? So she'll get that instruction, and then she's like, you know, communicating with a spirit, okay, that this person communicates with. So she's telling the spirit, okay, cut it to 50%. All of a sudden, it shows 50% on the instruments. Cut it to 25%, cuts it to 25%, okay? Now, that's what he's been doing now for 10 years, okay? And the man's 75 years old. This is a full-blown professor, okay? and communicating with the spirit world, And what he's trying to develop is like a telephone, like a cell phone, for us to communicate with the deceased. Now, do we really know it's the deceased? In actuality, that we can speculate on that. Okay, it is somehow the shield that protects against. I'm not a physicist or a scientist, and I read about it, but I totally forgot about it. It shields against certain type of energy, forms from going out and coming in. Electronics and other types of forces. So, will that prevent her directly interfering with that object? Maybe she's doing it. Okay. These are all these questions that are out there. Okay. But the point is that, some weird shit is happening. And we've got people like that in our board. Okay. Bob Davis, a retired professor of neuroscience. Rudy Schild, Dr. John Klimo, Dr. Michael Grosso, who received a PhD in philosophy from Columbia University. He himself is an experiencer. He's written like 8 books on the paranormal. Okay. He saw 3 huge UFO orbs dancing on top of the local Catholic church in Lower Manhattan in Greenwich Village to the beat of John Coltrane. Okay. In the late 60s, the song was The God, the Father, and the Holy Ghost. The title, I think it was the Holy Ghost, the Holy Spirit was the title of the song, which is an avant-garde jazz piece. And they were dancing in rhythm to John Coltrane on top of the dome of a local Catholic church. Okay. And it was 3 huge orbs. And it was witnessed by him, his girlfriend, and a neighbor in the apartment building. Right. And so all of a sudden, after the song was over with, the 3 orbs went, and took off. And he's had other paranormal experiences, lots of other paranormal experiences. So this is and he's written like 8 books on the paranormal, and he's written 2 books for these 2 major books, these 600-page books that was done by the University of Virginia, and they were done by the professors, several professors at the Division of Perceptual Studies, which is part of the University of Virginia, their School of Medicine, Department of Psychiatry. It's a separate division. And so he's written several articles for that organization, these 2 books titled Beyond Physicalism. And the other one was, goodness, I forgot the name of it. Beyond Physicalism. Anyway, but the point is that this is a real fucking academic, not Richard Dolan, who never was an academic, or Stephen Greer, who never done any research whatsoever of this phenomenon. These are, people that are out there hustling. These are hustlers.
If you had advice for the people that are watching this now, that are into this subject, what would be your best piece of advice?
My best piece of advice is that this phenomenon is all interrelated, all of the paranormal. What we call the contact modalities, all the different ways that humans are piercing the veil of our reality and having contact with non-human intelligence. UFOs, near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences, ghosts and spirits, channeling, hallucinogenic journeys, DMT, ayahuasca, whatever, remote viewing, all these things. It's all part of one phenomenon. And this phenomenon involves some advanced, quantum physics, cosmology of the nature of our reality that we just don't understand. Okay. We just don't understand it, but we know it's all interrelated because all of it involves a manipulation of space-time that we know. Okay. And so instead of viewing these things from a very physicalist perspective, okay, a nuts and bolts perspective, okay, these things are based upon what is called non-local consciousness, how we as humans interact with our greater reality, okay, which we still don't understand, okay, we're totally clueless of. But yet you have all these people who have all the answers, okay, they have all the solutions. Run away from those assholes, okay. They're just snake oil salesmen, these are people that used to travel out in the west of the United States with these little covered wagons, and inside were filled with, thousands of these little bottles that they used to peddle as a magic brew that would cure every illness, from cancer to rheumatoid arthritis to everything, to alcoholism. You want to get cured of your alcoholism, drink this shit, How much is it? Oh, it's, 50 cents, So these are commonly called snake oil salesmen, okay? That's what the field of ufology is, okay? It's just a huge groupings of snake oil salesmen. And these people are totally clueless, okay? Anyone that comes to you like they've got all the answers, run away, okay? We don't know any answers. We don't even know what questions to ask, okay? We have a very minimalist understanding of just how complex this is, but we're pretty much clueless, okay? The other thing is that this is not nuts and bolts. This is not TikToks, whatever, the UFOs, videos, pictures, and Roswell crashes and the Nimitz and all that crap, that seeing this phenomenon from that perspective puts you in a little cubicle box. That little box that they found the Altacama skeleton in, it puts you in that little box, okay? When actually the desert is a huge, phenomenon, but yet you're inside this, you're inside the fishbowl. All you know is what's inside the fishbowl. You don't know anything that's outside of the fishbowl. So, so this is a totally different perspective that I'm telling people. It's based upon a multidimensional perspective. It's based upon something called non-local consciousness, okay? And I think the only thing that we can do at this point is just to document the phenomenon. And this is what we've been trying to do, to document and to be able to draw comparisons to how are they similar. Because in terms of the physics, we just don't understand that, and that'll come for a later generation, So just keep an open mind. That would be my instructions.
Rey Hernandez, my friend, thank you so much for coming on tonight and opening my eyes to kind of a different way of looking at it. Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Would you come on again?
Yes, we can come on again. I didn't get to talk about the new organization,
Well, listen,
we could do that when the new book comes out.
Yeah, I would like to. I'm going to show you. I'm going to send you some interviews of people maybe I might want to introduce you to, and maybe get you on with them to some experiences. Because I think it'd be great for them for experiences to be able to maybe ask you some questions. But thank you so much for coming on tonight. I know you've got a busy schedule, my friend. I really wish you the best of luck. Would you mind staying below while I just say goodbye to the folks, and I'll come have a private chat with you?
Yeah. And my wife is calling me now, and my daughter was calling me, so I know something urgent is going on.
No problem, Ray. Okay, thank you so much.
I'll hang on after you hang off, but only for about a minute.
Yeah, that's fine, mate. Okay. Well, Ray, if you got to go, mate, we'll catch up later. That's no problem.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah.
Okay.
Tell the folks again, info@experiencer.org. I'll send you numerous documents, including a peer-reviewed academic research paper that was done by 4 academic professors, including myself, on our research study. So this is an academic paper that was peer-reviewed. So it's a little difficult reading, because it's academically oriented, but I'll send you that too, so people can understand that this is much more complex than what you originally thought it might be.
Ray, you've been legendary. Thank you, my friend.
Okay, all right. Best of luck.
And it's nice to have somebody on with no BS.
Yeah, bullshit. All the 4-letter words. I was raised talking like that, and you brought it out of me. So you're a wicked demon there for making me talk like that.
Well, next time you can have a beer with me.
Oh man, I was looking at that. I said, "Is that a beer? Or is that pop soda?"
He says, "I told you it's an over 18s channel."
Oh man,
I'm 40 years old. I've probably got about another 5 years left if I carry on at this rate. But
I'm 64 years old, and at most I could have is 3 beers now. Yeah. After that, I'll wake up with a headache.
Well, Ray, thank you, mate, and you take care. Have a nice Christmas, my friend.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Well, guys, Rey Hernandez there, and I know it's been a long one tonight, but I was just so intrigued with his story at info@experiencer.org, and guys in the chat, all amazing. I'm so sorry. I wish I had like another me that, and I keep saying I'm going to make some of you guys moderators. Just one thing I'm going to say now to anybody who's staying in, if I make you a moderator and somebody's kicking off in the chat and calling me a dickhead and a ginger bearded warrior or anything like that, just let them, unless someone's been absolutely foul and racist or homophobic or anything like that, that's when they get kicked. But if somebody wants to have a pop at me, let them, because I'll just call them out. I'll just invite them on the show. I can fight my own battles. That's my only worry when I get moderators, is that they will ban the trolls, because I kind of like the trolls. The trolls make me happy. I like to read the comments of the trolls. But people, make sure you check out Rey Hernandez there. I only found out about him through David. And David, if you are watching this, my friend, thank you very much for it. Well, I know you're watching it, for introducing me to Rey Hernandez, an intriguing character. A very, very weird story to start off with, but then when you hear the rest of it that goes with that story, and the fact that he doesn't want anything out of this, it's just kind of like it seems like he's on this journey, and for me that's kind of like where I am in all this. I don't know where I'm going with this. I really need to urinate right now. I need to stop drinking beers while I'm doing a 3-hour long interview. I'm thinking also, guys, what I'm going to do is maybe cut some of these, start to put some little snippets of interviews on the channel. So I go back to doing a little bit of editing, but maybe like 15 minutes worth of maybe a little bit of Ray, a bit of whoever I interview, just putting little snippets, because some of you guys aren't going to hang about for 3 hours. I know I won't. I try to watch. I love watching Goof on radio, but I can't watch him constantly because I don't get time. I like watching Dark Hour. I like watching John's new channel, Wreaking Havoc. But I just sometimes don't get time to watch the whole vlogs just because of what life's like. So I'm thinking maybe if I get some good snippets, maybe you guys can comment when the video's uploaded, because it'll probably take 24 hours for this to upload after it's gone live. But you could give me timestamps that would make a good little 15 minutes of Rey Hernandez or whoever else I'm interviewing. But I'm just thinking, I'm not going to start another channel. Can't bother with that. One's enough. But guys, for this year, all the support you've given me, it's immense. It's amazing. And I can't thank you enough. It's been a terrible year for everybody. But I think, at the end of it all, we're gonna come out strong. That's my words of wisdom. I know I stayed a little bit quiet there with Ray, but the guy can talk. He's a good talker. I wish I could talk like that. I think I'd have more subscribers. But yeah, for everybody who supports me, I know I'm going on now. I've had 3 beers. You know what I'm like after 3 beers. Get the thumbs up if you haven't already. If you want to share the videos out, that means the world to me. I do have a Patreon page. If you want to support the channel further, that means a lot. It is in the description. And enjoy yourself. If whatever you're doing this year, have a Merry Christmas. And I never knew that Ray was so fond of Stephen Greer. I need to get this man on the show at some point. I don't know if he will, though. I don't know which way. Is he this side? He's this side. Stephen, when you come in on, my friend, can people start spamming Stephen Greer and just ask him to come on the show? I think I've probably got more chance of getting a giant pigeon on the show than getting Stephen Greer on the show. But and there we go. That's Ray's book. I kind of didn't think this helped very well, because I'm kind of like this. Hello, check his book out. It's in the description below. If you just kind of email the guy, I like the trigger happy here. If you email the guy, he'll send you the first 100 pages free. So it's like, that's what, if that's not a deal, I don't know what is. You know, he sent me, I think he sent me the entire book, but I said, I'm sorry, mate, I'm dyslexic. But guys, yeah, have a bloody fantastic Christmas. You're all awesome. Now I'm gonna go piss because I'm dying. I'm absolutely dying here. Merry Christmas, people. Good night. God bless. Mind the bugs don't bite.